Chapter 960. Bailey Shangxia tried his best to not sound so cool, but the effect was not good. The words that came out of his mouth were still a little cold. Is it inconvenient for Mommy to have a gathering? Helly and Vivian did not speak. Qing Chun, who was standing beside her, tugged on her jeans. Helly and Vivian subconsciously bent down to cooperate with her son. Qing Chun's cheeks were still puffed up. She hugged the demon plushie in her hands and said obediently to the other side of the phone, "I miss Big Brother too. When I went to school today, the teacher caught me daydreaming during English class." Hearing his younger brother's voice, Bailey Shangxia did not need to read the piece of paper in his hand anymore. His little face was very cool. "Be good. Wait for me to come over." Helly and Vivian, can these two little fellows not decide the adult's itinerary without permission? Of course, Baligaju would not allow his son to continue wasting time like this, because this excuse was not enough. Hence, a certain highness took the phone. His low and deep voice was very pleasant to the ear. "Vivian, Shangxia has been clamoring to see you. It's probably because he was injured after returning from the demon world, but he didn't want to tell me. That's why he wants to look for you in Qingchen." Bailey Shangxia, all the demons. The one who was injured was not Little Master. It was us. Okay. Little Master was domineering and cold now. And he even looked like he was stepping on a demon. How did he look like he was injured? Bailey Shangxia had always thought that his imperial father was very shameless. After all, he would always use the trick of injuring himself to gain sympathy with his imperial mother. However, he had never thought that he would also be the victim of that trick. He was so shameless that there was no bottom line. Baligaju calmly said what he wanted to say, completely ignoring his son's disdainful gaze. To His certain highness, getting the result he wanted was the most important thing. As expected, when Helly and Vivian heard that her son was injured, she immediately said, "Okay, then come over." "That's right. I'm at the Emperor Hotel. Call me when you arrive, and I'll go out." How could Du Cece and Li Meng let Helly and Vivian go at this time? They interrupted and asked, Wei Wei, who is it? You want to leave first? That won't do. The professor will be here soon. Back then, the professor was very good to you. You can't just leave like that. We still need to gather and have a heart-to-heart talk later. How can you leave without eating? Helly and Vivian was still holding her phone. She raised her eyebrows and the corners of her eyes turned cold. Is he your boyfriend? Someone guessed. He looks like a boyfriend. Some of her classmates were still very nice, especially some of the female students who took Helly and Vivian as their role model. Now that they saw Helly and Vivian, they always had an indescribable feeling. Facing these people, Helly and Vivian smiled generously. He's my boyfriend. Is he coming to pick you up now? Some of her classmates were envious. You're so happy. Hearing this, Du Cece changed her mind. Since he's her boyfriend, let him come over for a meal. We're all classmates, so there's no need to be so distant. She wanted to see what Helly and Vivian's boyfriend looked like. She reckoned that a lousy car mechanic like her wouldn't be able to find a decent man. Unlike her, the people she introduced were all good resources. For example, the person her uncle introduced to her would definitely be much better than her boyfriend. Yes, Wei Wei. Since he's your boyfriend and he's coming, let him come up for a meal. Li Meng smiled. Or is it that your boyfriend is too shameful and you don't want everyone to see him? The phone in Helly and Vivian's hand was still connected. The man was sitting in the extended version of the luxury long-distance running car with his legs slightly crossed. He could clearly hear the conversation on the other end. His pair of deep eyes sank. He put aside the business magazine in his hand. Wei Wei, who are you talking to? No one. We're all classmates. Helly and Vivian retracted her gaze from Li Meng and Du Cece. Her tone was neither fast nor slow. Baligaju smiled. His voice was still pleasant to the ears, but what was hidden underneath was the cunning and bloodthirsty unique to demons. Since your classmate invited me, it shouldn't be a problem for you to bring a family member along, right? Is there a family member as big as you? According to Helly and Vivian's character, she wouldn't waste her time on such meaningless things like showing off her boyfriend. On the contrary, she felt that it was better for His Highness to hide at home. Otherwise, if someone were to covet His Highness's beauty, she would have to think of a way to get rid of them. She always felt that the loss outweighed the gain. That's right. Hellion Vivian was still very domineering in certain aspects. Du Cece saw that Hellion Vivian didn't have any intention of bringing her boyfriend along. She was afraid that she would miss this opportunity to ridicule her. So, she said, Wei Wei, don't feel pressured to bring your boyfriend along. Li Meng's husband will be joining us later. Our gathering this time is very big, and we're allowed to bring family members. So, Wei Wei, if you continue to refuse, we will start to doubt whether your boyfriend is real or not. This is just an excuse you came up with when we talked about introducing a boyfriend to you. Hellion Vivian turned her head and said coldly, Du Cece, you are a lawyer. When the professor taught us in the past, he didn't teach us these messy ideas. So, all these years, you've been carrying this kind of idea in your lawsuit? Hellion Vivian had always had a queen-like aura around her. It all depended on whether she would use it or not. From the moment they met until now, she had been hugging her son. Many people thought that she would restrain herself because of her undignified profession. Who would have thought that her temperament would be revealed inadvertently like this? At that moment, Du Cece felt a sense of oppression. She pretended to be pitiful and said, Wei Wei, I don't mean anything else. I'm just joking. Why can't you take a joke? A joke is to make everyone feel happy, not to judge others based on your thoughts. Hellion Vivian's every word made Du Cece speechless. Du Cece didn't expect that after all these years of cultivation, she still couldn't compare to Hellion Vivian. In the past, she couldn't win against her in debates. Why is this woman still so eloquent? Wei Wei, aren't you a little too sensitive? The female classmate who wanted to use this class reunion to get closer to Du Cece naturally wouldn't let Du Cece be at a disadvantage. Cece just doesn't want to spoil everyone's mood. It's rare for us to gather together, but you're in a hurry to leave. What's the meaning of this? April 19th, 2016, 18:40 p.m. If you can't see the latest update, please refresh the page. Chapter 9:61. All right. Li Meng tried to smooth things over. We all have the same thoughts. I hope it'll be more lively. Wei Wei, Cece is right. My husband will be here later. What's your boyfriend's job? Maybe we can sit down and eat together. My husband is usually very busy. If there's a good project, he can bring everyone to work together. Then, you won't have to work so hard. Don't be so secretive. On the surface, it sounded like nothing, but in fact, Li Meng used a charitable tone from the beginning to the end. It was very obvious that she had already imagined Hellion Wei Wei's boyfriend to be the most basic type of person. She was implying that her own husband could lead everyone to become rich. Originally, Li Meng didn't want her husband to come along when she came to see Xiao Zifeng. But now she didn't think so. Although her husband wasn't very good-looking, his family background was first class. He even had cooperation with the Xiao family. In addition, he often appeared in financial news. Everyone here knew him. Everyone who came to work wanted to be their own boss. Presumably, Hellion Vivian's boyfriend was the same. When that person came and saw her husband, he would naturally lower his attitude. When that time came, Hellion Vivian would definitely feel bad when she saw her boyfriend fawning over other men. This was the only way to thoroughly humiliate Hellion Wei Wei to the core. Thinking of this, Li Meng faintly felt a sense of victory in her heart. How could Hellion Vivian not understand the meaning behind her words? The corners of her mouth curled up with a hint of sarcasm. Then, she said to the phone, Do you want to come up and have a meal with us? Hellion Vivian thought that His Highness would definitely refuse with his personality. Back in Tiandao, when they were together, once someone invited him to a heavenly banquet, he would immediately give it to them. He handed the invitation to her, and then continued to read his ancient scroll with one hand propping up his chin. His Highness obviously couldn't be tempted by delicious food. But this time, unexpectedly, the man's noble voice could be heard through the phone. Okay, so straightforward. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and put down the phone. She smiled at her classmates and said, He'll be here soon. In reality, she didn't care how the people around her looked at her. Hellion Wei Wei, indeed, also wanted to see her benefactor who brought her along that year. Otherwise, she would have already ridden her BMW Tomahawk and left, and wouldn't waste time here. When Li Meng and Du Cece saw that things were going according to their plan, their smiles became even wider. With the two of them working together, when Helly and Vivian's poor boyfriend came later, they would definitely let him know the difference between them. Qingshan was standing at the side. As a genius with an IQ that exceeded his age, he could clearly see the performance of these two women. However, Qingshan wasn't in the mood to care about them. Right now, he only had one thought in his mind, and that was that his brother was coming. When he thought of this, Qingshan felt very happy. When he was happy, he became even cuter. The ahog on his little head stood up, and his cheeks were puffed up. He was holding the devil doll that he wanted to give to Bailey Shangxia with one hand, while his other hand didn't forget to send a WeChat message to his brother. The main reason he sent the WeChat message was that he found something very interesting to share with his brother. However, Qingshan didn't know that after Bailey Shangxia sent a provocative message to Beligaju that day, his little phone was in the hands of a shameless person. "Dad, you told me before that if I want to eat gracefully, I must understand humans and know how they live." Bailey Shangxia's voice was a little cold. "If you don't give me my phone now, in the human world, it's a violation of privacy. You'll be condemned." Beligaju laughed and was very evil. "Bailey Shangxia, have I been too friendly to you recently? Do you really think that you should stay in a human world?" Bailey Shangxia heard this and was a little unconvinced. "Who was the one who said that as long as I call mother, you won't have to threaten me when you go to the demon world for a month? Dad, are you going back on your word? I won't threaten you for a month, but that doesn't mean that I won't threaten you after this month." Beligaju was very calm. "If you want to stay in the demon world for the rest of your life, I can return your little phone to you now. If you don't want to, then be good and don't disturb me when I'm looking at WeChat." Bailey Shangxia scratched the car. "I really want to beat someone up." Bailey Shangxia, who was as shameless as his father, could only grab the big demon under his feet with both hands and start a one-sided PK. This was the cultivation that little demons had to do on their path of growth. However, Bailey Shangxia's methods were especially ruthless, and the big demon felt that there was nothing left to live for in this world. Beligaju didn't care how angry his son would be. He unlocked the screen with his finger and raised an eyebrow. "Qingshan's WeChat?" Bailey Shangxia coolly kicked the demon out of the car when he heard that it was his younger brother who was looking for him. He then moved closer to his father and wanted to see it together. Beligaju opened the WeChat and saw a few uncomfortable words. "Brother, there's a person who has a crush on Mother here. Judging from his eyes, he must like Mother very much, but Mother doesn't seem to have noticed it herself." Bailey Shangxia saw the WeChat message and knew that the situation was bad. As expected, the little phone made a buzzing sound again, but the man's side profile didn't change at all. However, his eyes were gradually dyed with a blood-red light, and the surrounding demons became more violent. All of a sudden, the dark fog filled the entire car. Bailey Jiaju sat with his legs slightly crossed. His slender fingers were wrapped in pure white gloves. His good-looking thin lips slowly raised into an arc. It was bloodthirsty and dangerous. Meanwhile, at the Emperor Hotel, not far away, Li Meng saw that the matter was settled. She turned around and said to her classmates, "Since Wei Wei has agreed, then we don't have to worry about not seeing her boyfriend. Let's go and order first." It's not easy to book a room in the Emperor Hotel, especially when the meal hasn't started yet. Usually, they won't receive guests. This time, we can book a private room, thanks to Cece. Du Cece pushed her and pretended to be reserved. In fact, her tones sounded like she was showing off intentionally. "Ming Ming, that's enough. I don't have any connections. I rely on my family. After all, Uncle is a senior manager in the Ju Wei group, so he naturally has a say here." Chapter 962. Cece, you don't have to be so humble. As long as you work harder, this Emperor Hotel is not a place you can eat whenever you want, Li Meng said. Some of the students who arrived late did not understand and asked curiously, "What do you mean?" "We don't understand. She's recently dating the boss of the Ju Wei group. This Emperor Hotel is just one of the properties of the Ju Wei group. Li Ming pretended to be mysterious. You should understand now. Du Cece blushed and pulled the corner of Li Ming's shirt. It's not even close yet. Don't talk nonsense. Understood, understood, we all understand. The students looked at Du Cece with ambiguous gazes. Du Cece enjoyed the attention very much, and she did not deny it. She knew how to make people believe that she was really dating the CEO Jew. Hence, she acted bashfully from the beginning to the end. Everything was going well at first. However, when Du Cece looked up, she realized that no matter what happened, Xiao Zifeng's eyes never left Helly and Vivian. The way he looked at a person so intently had become the deepest jealousy in her heart since they were in school. This jealousy was still there even now. She looked at the man who had never shown any emotions towards her. Her eyes flashed as she clenched her fists. She turned her head to look at Helly and Wei Wei and said, I wonder what Wei Wei's new boyfriend looks like. I've heard that a lot of girls are pressured by their surroundings and end up making do with themselves in the end. Wei Wei, don't be like this. Our faces are so handsome. We must find someone who is worthy of you. Helly and Vivian, don't listen to Cece. My husband is not very handsome. However, the most important thing for a man is to know how to dress up. When your boyfriend comes later, see how he dresses up. If he can't, Zifeng and the rest can give him some advice. Li Ming spoke with sincerity, but in reality, the disdain in her eyes could be seen. Helly and Vivian frowned. Was she implying that His Highness was ugly and did not know how to dress? Wei Wei, why aren't you talking? Did I guess correctly? Du Cece smiled and said, It's okay. It's normal for men to be a little rough. After all, no one can guarantee that they will find the one they like. I'm afraid that some girls will do something for money and serve those fat old men. But Wei Wei doesn't look like one. She rides a motorcycle to work every day. She definitely won't do anything wrong. When Qingchen heard this, she looked at Du Cece with her big eyes. She seemed to be on the verge of exploding. When Helly and Vivian saw this, she reached out and grabbed Qingchen's ear. She smiled and looked at the students around her. Since we're talking about this, to be honest, I like that person's appearance. Otherwise, we wouldn't be together. Little Qingchen's murderous aura immediately disappeared. He nodded his little head. He believed in this. Ever since he was born, Beauty Wei Wei had been praising his father's handsomeness almost every day. That had become his mantra ever since he was a child. But why didn't his brother reply to his WeChat? He was still waiting to discuss with his brother. Helly and Vivian's words surprised everyone. Many of the students laughed. They did not want to make the atmosphere awkward, so they joked, Wei Wei, are you serious? You don't look like the kind of person who is greedy for beauty. I've always been in the appearance circle. Helly and Vivian's tone was very natural. She smiled and said, He's the most handsome man I've ever seen. I took the initiative to chase after him because of his appearance. Helly and Vivian was telling the truth. She had always boasted that she was a domineering president. Of course, she would be the one to chase after people. However, it was obvious that others would not think so. Wei Wei, you're exaggerating. Zifeng is here. Who can be more handsome than Zifeng? Be careful, you're spreading your net too wide. It'll be hard to take it back later. Li Ming said this and laughed to the people beside her. It's said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Wei Wei is working very hard for her boyfriend. Why would the cold and talented girl take the initiative to chase after him? This is too degrading. She used to say that her family has connections. Look at the result. She's still working on her car now. Among the 3 female classmates, one of them quickly understood what Li Ming meant. She glanced at Helly and Vivian with disdain. Du Cece tried to smooth things over. Maybe something happened to Wei Wei's family. That's why she's like this. She definitely doesn't want to lie. You guys should stop talking about the things that happened in school. Back then, we were still young. Who didn't have vanity? Am I right, Wei Wei? Vanity? Helly and Vivian repeated these 3 words playfully. She smiled slowly, and there was a unique meaning in her thin lips. Du Cece looked like she knew her very well. She raised her wrist and looked at the watch on her wrist. It's almost 5 o'clock. We've been talking for so long, but we haven't ordered anything yet. I'll make a call first and ask them to open the red wine first. Red wine tastes better when you're awake. You guys can take a look at what you want to eat. With my uncle here, I'll definitely let everyone enjoy the best treatment. Wei Wei, you should eat more later. Not everyone can eat the food here. She was obviously saying that Helly and Vivian could not afford the food in the Emperor Hotel. The few female students behind Du Cc, including Li Meng, laughed at the same time. It was obvious what they meant. In a hotel like this, the food was indeed more expensive than usual, especially the precious ingredients. For example, the sashimi that had just been flown in from Japan and the most authentic roast duck that had just been cooked in the capital. Each dish cost more than $1,000. Moreover, one must make a reservation in advance if they wanted to eat these dishes. Therefore, Du Cc was very confident when she said this. In her opinion, Wei Wei did not have the ability to spend money, let alone find an outstanding boyfriend. When she thought of this, Du Cc added with a smile, Wei Wei, don't worry. Even if your boyfriend isn't as good looking as you said, we won't say anything. We won't be so. Before Du Cc could finish her words, a graceful and noble voice slowly sounded from behind the crowd. It was accompanied by a slightly cold and deep voice. Am I late? Chapter 963. The voice was not loud, but because it was so pleasing to the ears, it broke the noise of the hotel. It was hard for people not to notice it. Everyone turned their heads to look at the source of the voice. They saw a man standing against the light. They did not know how long he had been standing there. He was wearing a black trench coat that was half open, revealing a pure white shirt underneath. Although he was wearing a pair of wine-red trousers that they could not identify, the texture was very good. It successfully made his legs look slender and powerful. His silver white hair made him look like a character who had walked out of a comic book. He was full of dazzling handsomeness. His eyes were long and slightly slanted, exuding a faint sharpness. His skin was pale white, and the diorum style seemed to be tailor-made for him. From afar, the man looked like a vampire aristocrat with an oriental charm, exuding a kind of enchanting nobility. In an instant, the surrounding crowd seemed to have become a part of the background. Du Cc and the others were all speechless. Even though they had seen a lot of things, they had never seen such a handsome person. Involuntarily, several female students looked at the man in front of them in a daze. Their eyes followed his movements. He was standing at the entrance of the hall, holding a child with his slender, ivory fingers. That child was also very handsome. His facial features were very deep, and his small face was fair. He was dressed in a cool manner, and he looked a little like a little devil in the TV series. He was even wearing a small leather glove on his hand. Just when Du Cc and the others were tongue-tied, the man walked over. The man had already walked over. At that moment, the dim lights in the hall seemed to have all run into his eyes. They were like flowing diamonds, pure and beautiful. Helly and Vivian had long known that this man would be able to catch other people's attention even if he was thrown into a crowd. But in fact, it was even more shocking than she had imagined. She did not know how that kind of aura was formed. He was obviously dressed in the most modern clothes, but it made people feel that this person was like a movie character from the 19th century. Just by standing there, he was handsome and peerless. Du Cc was still wondering who this man who suddenly appeared was. After all, she didn't have such an outstanding classmate in her class. At this moment, the few female students behind Du Cc who had mocked Helly and Vivian earlier were blushing. No matter who the other party was, they had to strike up a conversation first. Thus, one of the women, who thought that she was pretty, reached out to stroke her long hair and said in a sweet voice, "It's not too late. We just started." The woman's words were about to come out of her mouth when she was abruptly stopped by what happened next. The man didn't even look at them. He walked past them and stopped in front of Helly and Vivian. He asked intimately, "What's on the corner of your mouth?" "The corners of my mouth?" Helly and Wei Wei was confused. Beligaju simply reached out his hand and slowly brushed his finger across Helly and Vivian's lips. As if on purpose, this action was done extremely slowly and gently. In fact, Bailey Shangxia could see very clearly that there was nothing on the corner of his mother's mouth. His shameless father was simply declaring his sovereignty. No one else would use such a method. Xiao Zifeng stood aside and looked at Helly and Vivian. His eyes were extremely gloomy. Some of the male students were still talking to him, but he could not hear what they were saying. He could only look at the man who could get close to Helly and Vivian without any scruples. His fingers were stiff, and his heart was in turmoil. Everyone present was stunned when they saw Beligaju's action. They more or less understood what was going on. Vivian, who is this? Before Helly and Vivian could say anything, Beligaju smiled. He was cold and well-mannered. He curled his lips and said, "Hello, I'm Vivian's husband." Husband? The university students were stunned by his smile. Didn't he say that he was her boyfriend? Hearing this, the man curled his thin lips and looked to the side to rub Helly and Vivian's head. He said rather helplessly, "We already have a child together. Why are you still telling others that I'm your boyfriend? Vivian, you're always so unclear about your position." Helly and Vivian, she was really not used to His Highness being so gentle. Moreover, he seemed to be very cooperative with other people's questions today. Why? He was usually very cold and aloof. Even if it was for her sake, according to His Highness' way of doing things, he would only reply with a light when others asked him a few questions. What was going on today? Bailey Shangxia, who knew his father's way of doing things, did not complain about his father's shamelessness. Instead, he tiptoed and picked up Qingxun from Helly and Vivian's arms. He acted like a good brother. "Are you hungry?" Qingxun nodded her little head and pushed the devil plushie in her hand forward. "This is for Big Brother." "I didn't buy it. I caught it." Bailey Shangxia hugged his younger brother, who was only a head shorter than him. Clearly, he did not have the time to take the plushie. A rare smile appeared on his cool little face. He was happy that his younger brother always thought of him. The two little ones were already very close. After being separated for a day, they had a lot to say to each other. "I also have something for you. I'll help you put on when we eat later." As a good brother, Bailey Shangxia was more mature than Qingxun. Helly and Vivian asked him to put Qingxun down. Bailey Shangxia did not let go. Although he was a little shaky when he walked, he still felt that it was necessary to carry his younger brother. It was more dangerous to let Qingxun go down. There was such a stupid human here. What if they bump into each other later? Looking at this warm and intimate scene, Du Cece and the others felt their faces hurt. Especially the few female students who tried to strike up a conversation with a man. They felt jealous and ashamed. They never thought that Helly and Vivian would find such an outstanding-looking man. Li Ming remembered what she said just now. She wanted to scratch the wall because compared to her husband was really too weak. Fortunately, her son said that he wanted to go to the toilet, and her father took him there. Otherwise, standing here would only show the gap between them. Seeing through Li Ming's thoughts, Qingxun, who had been waiting for a chance to counterattack, suddenly seized the best opportunity. Holding the devil plushie in her hand, she said in a childish voice, "Auntie, now that you have seen my dad, you should give up the idea of letting your husband teach my dad how to change clothes, right? After all, my dad is really not ugly, and obviously Uncle can't teach my dad how to wear clothes." Chapter 964. After little Qingxun's reminder, all the students recalled what Li Ming and the others had said before the man appeared. They all turned to look at Li Ming and the others. Li Ming and Du Cece had been flattered by others ever since they graduated. They had never encountered such mocking gazes before. Moreover, it was in front of so many people. The awkwardness they felt was indescribable. Li Ming could only force a smile. Her face was a little stiff. Children tend to take adults' words seriously. "Qingxun, we were just joking with your mother." Wei, you too. You had such a handsome man at home. Why didn't you take him out earlier and let us see him? You're still hiding him." She originally thought that by saying this, Helly and Wei would be somewhat embarrassed and change the topic. Who would have thought that Helly and Wei would curve her lips at her, mischievously and willfully? "It's because he's too handsome that I have to hide him. I didn't want you to see him at first. After all, I'm very troubled by people who want to come over and strike up conversation." As Helly and Vivian spoke, she glanced at the few female students with clear eyes. Her short sentence made those people's faces turn red and white. They looked at Helly and Vivian with eyes full of resentment. However, they had no choice but to suppress it. Otherwise, they would be the ones embarrassed. Wei, you two are a good match. A female student chuckled and gave her blessings. She meant what she said. The two of them were a perfect match, both in terms of appearance and height. It was also because Hellion Vivian was more charming and evil compared to other women. Her queen-like demeanor would not be hidden no matter what the environment was or what clothes she wore. This was the person she wanted to be when she was young. She was neither servile nor overbearing and was as tenacious as time. Otherwise, anyone who stood next to Beligaju would be overshadowed and would not be able to stand out. Beligaju was very satisfied to hear such a compliment. He smiled and thanked her. At that time, the female student did not know that because of her blessings, she would be officially hired by Ju Wei Group and become a member of their legal team. Du Cece, who was standing next to them, could not stop her heartstrings from trembling. She only felt that the man's voice seemed to have a magical power. There was a low magnetism in his cold voice. Now that she was listening to it again, his voice was clear and bright like the spring breeze in March. It was refreshing and gave her a special sense of comfort. What kind of luck did Hellion Vivian have to meet such a man? However, even if he was extraordinarily handsome, so what? He must be extremely poor. Otherwise, Hellion Wei wouldn't be a broken car mechanic until now. Thinking of this, Du Cece's heart calmed down a lot. While leading everyone into the private room, she smiled and said, Wei, listen to what you're saying. We're not young anymore, and we're not love-struck women. Why would we look at a man's appearance? At the very least, we should look for a successful boyfriend. Looks are secondary. Your boyfriend should have never been to the Emperor Hotel before. You should take care of him later. Come, let's start ordering. Let's eat some fruits first. I'm hungry. Du Cece looked at the waiter behind her and said, Go and get the menu. The Emperor Hotel had always been famous in the industry for its excellent service. A private room would be accompanied by 3 to 5 waiters. Other than taking orders and serving dishes, they were also responsible for leading the way and opening the red wine. Every waiter had undergone professional training and was wearing the uniform of a butler. They looked very classy in their suits and leather shoes. However, when the waiter heard Du Cece's order, he paused. In the end, he said, Please wait for a moment. He then left the luxurious private room. Du Cece frowned. Why did he say to wait for a moment? Shouldn't he pass the menu to them immediately? Could it be that the meal has not started yet? Forget it. These are all trivial matters. Du Cece looked at the students behind her and smiled. You don't have to be so polite. Sit anywhere you like. Today, this private room is ours. My uncle has already informed everyone, so no one will disturb us today. Cece, you're too extravagant. The few female classmates laughed again. When they sat down, they pretended to look at Hellion Vivian and said, Sure enough, what my mother taught me in the past was right. When looking for a boyfriend, you have to find one that's presentable. So what if he's good-looking? I heard that the president of the Ju Wei Group is rich and handsome. Cece, you have to seize the opportunity. When the time comes and the two of you are together, some people will see what the most perfect boyfriend is. Look at what you're saying. Don't you know Cece? She's easily shy. From what I see, since she and that person have already eaten together, their relationship should not be too bad. Maybe the two of them are in an ambiguous period now. What's there to wait for? The person who asked this question was Bailey Shangxia. He was still smiling, and his smile was brewing an aura that belonged exclusively to the little devil. Du Cece's heart trembled when she heard this child's sudden question. She was so guilty that she did not dare to look at the gazes around her. However, she calmed down very quickly. What was she afraid of? What would a child know? In this circle, other than Li Meng's husband who had seen young Master Ju from afar, she was the only one who could enter the Ju Wei Group. If she said that she had seen him, then she had seen him. Would anyone expose her? Little kid, why do you ask this? Du Cece said sweetly. Of course I've seen him before. Annie and that president are very good friends. When Bailey Shangxia heard this, he glanced sideways at Beligaju, who was standing still. Then, he smiled very slowly. Is that so? A friend who can't recognize my father? If she had really seen him before, how could she not recognize my father? Du Cece was confused by Bailey Shangxia's smile. However, she did not take this matter to heart. After all, he was just a little kid in her heart. Bailey Shangxie did not say much. However, this did not mean that the battle had stopped even though he was not present during the whole process. However, based on the current situation, this group of people, especially this stupid woman, must have bullied his mother before he arrived. How could he let the people who bullied his mother off so easily? Qing Chun was sitting next to Bailey Shangxie. She was very cute as she whispered into her brother's ear and reported to him. The person who spoke just now is called Du Cece. She was the one who said that she had a blind date with my father. She was the one who said that her uncle was a high-ranking executive in the entertainment company. Which entertainment company? Bailey Shangxie thought very coolly. When I go back, I'll make that company go bankrupt. Qing Chun lifted the devil plushie up and said, Zhu Wei. Bailey Shangxie thought to himself, this company really cannot go bankrupt. Chapter 965. There's another person. She's little Fatty Cheng's mother. Little Fatty Cheng was there just now. He even asked me to call him Big Brother. I held myself back for a long time and didn't beat him up, Qing Chun said angrily. Bailey Shangxie raised his eyebrows and his eyes turned red immediately. The smile on his face became bloodthirsty and cruel. Good, very good. It seems that he had such thoughts because he didn't break little Fatty Cheng's bones the last time. Asking Qing Chun to call him Big Brother? Does he deserve it? The image of his younger brother and mother being bullied because they were not around immediately appeared in Bailey Shangxie's mind. As a good elder brother, he would never have thought that when they first met, he had wanted to take little Qing Chun in as a younger brother because he was too strong. Now, in Bailey Shangxie's heart, no other child in the world could be more obedient and sensible than his younger brother. That little Fatty Cheng was simply courting death. Wait a minute, little Fatty's surname is Cheng? Bailey Shangxie turned his head and asked his father in a low voice, is the human who always goes to the villa to greet you surnamed Cheng? Beligaju did not deny it. He sat back and crossed his legs leisurely. He smiled meaningfully. Bailey Shangxie understood what was going on. It seemed that his father was not only here to declare his ownership over his mother, but also to start a massacre. However, there were some people who were too vain. They were so vain that they could even lie as if they were telling the truth. Du Cece was already acting like she was the hostess and ordered the waiters to do this and that. Li Meng had just found her sense of superiority. She deliberately dialed her husband's number in front of her classmates. Hello, are you done? We're about to start eating. Yes, there are a lot of people. There are a few male students who want to meet you and talk to you about the project. Ask the waiters to open a few more bottles of red wine. Put the cost on me. Cheng sounded very rich. Li Meng put the call on speaker. She smiled and hung up the phone when she heard his words. The surrounding female students were envious. Li Meng, your husband is so generous. Emperor Sky Hotel's red wine isn't cheap. The cheapest one costs more than 1,000. This is Li Meng's husband. If it were someone else's husband, they might be heartbroken after drinking a few bottles. Du Cece was delighted when she heard those words. That was the way it should be. How could a woman who had not even finished her studies and could only rely on repairing cars to make a living get the upper hand? Today, she wanted to make Hellion Wei Wei lose all face and dignity. So what if he was a handsome boyfriend? Without any background, she could still embarrass the other party. You guys talk too much. Look, Wei Wei hasn't said anything yet. Du Cece turned her head and looked at Hellion Vivian. Vivian, since you already have a boyfriend, why don't you change your broken motorcycle? Cars aren't expensive these days. I just changed to a small sports car. It's only around 300,000. Nowadays, there are very few people who ride motorcycles. I don't see your boyfriend's car either. Both of your salaries should be enough to buy a car, right? It's really inconvenient to bring your child to school without a car. Although Du Cece did not say this sentence very loudly, it was clear enough for all the students to hear it. The meaning behind those words was already very clear. Hellion Vivian did not say anything. Xiao Zifeng could not hold it in anymore. He raised his hand and grabbed Du Cece's wrist. Cece, that's enough. Because of his social circle, he was destined to notice the malicious intent in Du Cece's words more than ordinary people. An innocent classmate would not say such things in such an occasion. Could it be that he was wrong from the beginning? He actually wanted to get close to that person through Du Cece, who was more familiar with him. At that time, he really did not see the subtlety in it. Du Cece did not expect Xiao Zifeng to stop her. She thought that even if he liked Helian Wei Wei, he would still give her some face in front of others. However, he did not expect that he would treat her this way because of Helian Wei Wei. Du Cece gritted her teeth and then laughed. Wei Wei, I don't mean anything else. I just think that you shouldn't put up a front so casually. You don't even have a car, so don't let your boyfriend dress so well. We're all classmates. We know each other very well. Why waste money? Upon hearing this, Helian Vivian raised her eyebrows and turned her head to look at the smiling man who was playing with his phone. I'm just wearing a black windbreaker. Is it necessary to say that I'm putting up a front casually? Among the clothes that His Highness wears, this one should be very common. The rest are all handmade. At the very least, this one is from a brand. If it were a normal person, they would definitely not be able to sit still after hearing those words. However, Helian Vivian and her family were very calm, especially Beligaju. He did not say a word from beginning to end. He put one hand on the back of Helian Vivian's chair and played with his phone with the other hand. He did not even look at the two women. That kind of noble aura was naturally disdainful. His silver-gray hair, fair skin, and beautiful eyes were light red under the bright lights. He was so handsome that it made people's hearts flutter. This was because Beligaju laughed. It was obvious that he was mocking them. It was this man's attitude that made Li Meng and Du Cece even angrier. It was as if he only had eyes for Helian Vivian and no one else was worthy to be in his eyes. What a joke. She was just an old and poor woman. How could they not be compared to Helian Vivian with her background and education? Cece is right. Vivian, you've worked hard to repair your car. It's not easy to earn some money. It's better to save it for the children. As a person, you should be content with what you have. Don't do things that are beyond your ability. It's normal for men to want to save face, but you can't squander it like this. Li Meng thought that since they had already put it this way, there was no need for them to worry about their reputation anymore. She smiled and said, if your boyfriend really has the money to spare, he'll help you change that lousy motorcycle first. Don't always think about buying clothes. You can't count on branded cars. It shouldn't be difficult to change to a four-wheeled motorcycle, right? Or is it that you can't even afford a car with your current financial situation? Li Meng looked at Helian Vivian and sighed softly. I thought that your boyfriend would have a decent job. Vivian, do you really not want to consider being an assistant at Cece's company? If it's really not possible, you can ask your boyfriend to go to Chung Group. I'll talk to my husband. Although he usually doesn't care about these trivial things in the company, it's still very convenient for him to arrange for someone to go in. As long as your boyfriend is not like you, who has no education. Before Li Meng could finish her words, a swishing sound was heard. Chapter 966. The door of the private room was pushed open from the outside, and two people walked in while talking and laughing. One of them was very old, and he was holding a book in his hand. It was obvious that he was a scholar. The other person had a very strong appearance, and it was obvious that he was not a local. The students did not care about the foreigner. In their eyes, only the white-haired scholar was left. Teacher, Du Cece was the first to stand up. She immediately greeted him with a smile. You're here. Why didn't you call me and ask me to pick you up? The scholar was not so particular. He waved his hand and said in a scholarly manner, It's only 2 or 3 steps away, and I know which private room it is. There's no need for you to pick me up. He did not like Du Cece, but he did not dislike her either. No matter how outstanding Du Cece was in the country, he would only acknowledge her as his disciple in his heart. The scholar did not notice Helian Wei Wei, who was standing outside the crowd. In order not to lament like an old man, he introduced the foreigner beside him to Du Cece and the others who surrounded them. This is Robert. You should have heard of his name before. There is never a case that he cannot win in the judicial field. After graduation, many of you will enter the legal field. If you have any difficult cases in the future, you can look for him. But remember, Robert is very busy. If you encounter a difficult case, don't look for him. Understand? Do you understand? The scholar was undoubtedly a good teacher. After graduation, there were very few professors who still wanted to introduce their own connections to their students. Robert was a gentleman. He tilted his head and smiled. He had the typical forthrightness of an American. Hey, old Yuan, although I'm very good, I'm not that good. There are still some cases that I can't win. He spoke in English, but it did not hinder the people present from communicating. After all, they were all graduates from famous universities. Even if they did not learn English well, they could still communicate with each other. For lawyers like them, Robert was simply a godlike figure. There were countless legends about him. Those who were in this line of work had heard of his name. Du Cece had always wanted to meet her teacher's good friend, but her professor had never introduced her to him. Du Cece did not know the reason until she went to visit the professor's house. She heard the professor's wife whispering, "Do you want to keep these connections and give them to Helly and Vivian in the future? Old Yuan, why are you so stubborn? What's so good about that child? In my opinion, she can't be compared to Cece at all. What do you know?" The professor's voice sounded angry at first, but then he slowly lowered his voice like he was sighing. Nowadays, people in this field are either competing for connections or merits. Everyone wants to be a lawyer to make money, but who would be willing to fight for those who really need justice? Are you saying that Wei Wei doesn't like money? Come on, who is different from who? Old Yuan, you have lived to this age. How can you be so muddle-headed? The professor's wife was still trying to persuade him. The professor shook his head like a dying old man. I was the one who taught Wei Wei personally. She was the only disciple I acknowledged back then. It wasn't because of her high attainments in law, but because you haven't met this child. This child looks normal on the surface, but in fact, she should have experienced a lot. In the field of law, you never need people who are like a blank piece of paper, because this blank piece of paper will eventually be dyed black. The strong people who seek justice for others are always those who have experienced darkness and know all kinds of unspoken rules, but their hearts are still bright. She has her own way of doing things, and this way of doing things is very suitable in this field. Her methods have never been upright. When she was in school, she was only in her early 20s, but she already knew how to use underhanded methods. But this is nothing because what she wants to do is very upright. This child has justice in her heart. Cece can't do it. She wants to acknowledge me as her teacher because she values my connections in this field. If I am just an ordinary teacher, she will not come to me every 2 to 3 days. The two of them are fundamentally different. How can I be assured to hand everything over to her? Du Cece's face was extremely gloomy at that time. She, who was separated by a wall, crushed the strawberries that she was washing. Her heart was full of disdain. What era was it now? It was all about who had a better family background. Even reading novels and watching TV shows was for the sake of relaxation and happiness. Who would care about the sense of justice? If this old man could not help her, Du Cece would have left directly. Did he really think that she was willing to serve him? Didn't he feel that Wei Wei, that woman, couldn't be compared to anyone? She actually wanted to see if the teacher knew that the student he originally valued the most was now merely a broken car mechanic. Would he still talk about some bullshit sense of justice? Thinking of this, Du Cece opened her mouth again. By the way, teacher, you still don't know, right? This time, Wei Wei is here too. She turned her head and said, I say, all of you move aside and let Wei Wei come over. There were too many students, regardless of gender. As soon as they entered, they surrounded Professor Yuan, blocking his view. Obviously, Professor Yuan did not expect to see Helly and Vivian again. After all, ever since she transferred to another school, no one knew where she went. Teacher, Du Cece pulled Professor Yuan's arm. You still don't know, right? Wei Wei's life is a little tough now. Her boyfriend can't help her. She can only ride her motorcycle to work every day. After fixing the car, her whole body is covered in dirt. She also has to take care of her child. Professor Yuan was undoubtedly heartbroken when he heard this news. He looked at Helly and Vivian, who was walking toward him. He knew that this profession was not easy. However, in his heart, anyone could choose not to be a lawyer. But how could Helly and Wei Wei not be a lawyer? Professor Yuan could not imagine how the student he was most proud of lived the life that Du Cece mentioned. Teacher. Hellion Vivian walked in front of him and then stopped in front of him. She smiled faintly. You haven't changed at all. You still like to hold a law dictionary in your hand. Is it in English? This child. What a pity. Professor Yuan did not know what to say. His eyes were a little bitter. It's good that you're back. Wei Wei, you don't know that after you left, teacher has been talking about you every day. After all, teacher has spent too much effort on you. Li Ming let out a long sigh. But who would have thought that not only did you not become a lawyer, but you also worked as a car mechanic in a small place? You have really let down teacher's cultivation. Hellion Vivian did not say anything because she was not looking at Du Cece. Instead, she was looking at Robert meaningfully. Robert felt that he was hallucinating. Oh my God. Chapter 9:67. How? How did he see her here? Robert was so excited that he opened his arms and wanted to give Hellion Vivian a hug. He did not expect that someone would be one step faster than him. He directly reached out his hand and pulled Hellion Wei Wei back, pulling her into his embrace. Robert was so excited that he did not even look at the man who warned him. Wei, why are you here? How many years have we not seen each other? It's been 3 years. God, if those people know that you're still alive, they will definitely go crazy. What's going on? Du Cece and Li Ming were stunned. As Robert spoke too fast, some of the students did not realize what was going on. Hellion Vivian spoke in fluent English. I've always been alive. Don't curse me, Robert. You better stop your habit of dancing around. If your fist accidentally touches a teacher, I don't mind throwing you out of the window. Oh, wait, you're still so cool. Robert's eyes lit up. Then, he furrowed his brows and spoke in a foreign accent in Chinese. But when did you become a mechanic? Is it because my Mandarin is not good enough that I didn't understand? Hellion Vivian smiled casually. I'm indeed repairing a car now. Oh my God, what's wrong with you? Why did you come to China to repair a car? Robert's tone was so exaggerated that he could act out at any moment. Professor Yuan knew that there were not many people who could make Robert act like this. Do you know each other? Not only do we know each other, but I lost 3 times in the past. Each time, I lost because I fought with her. When Robert mentioned Hellion Vivian, he started to dance around subconsciously. Old Yuan, is she your student? Oh, right. When I met her in America, she did introduce herself as a student. But don't you know that she already has a lawyer's license? It's probably because undergraduates are not allowed to go to court in China. But it's different in America. She was very popular back then. All right, in China terms, she was very popular. Many people went to see her in court. The information that I gave you before was all about her cases. In an instant, Du Cece and Li Ming's faces turned pale. It was as if all the blood had been sucked out of their faces. The female students behind them had been mocking Hellion Vivian for not getting a degree and becoming a car mechanic. Previously, they used the excuse of Du Cece ordering coffee in English to ridicule Hellion Wei Wei. They assumed that Hellion Wei Wei was a country bumpkin who did not know anything. But now, after hearing Hellion Wei Wei's extremely fluent English, they realized that something seemed to have gone wrong. But that was not all. They did not expect that a person who did not even get a degree would be better than a godly figure in the lawyer's world. They also did not expect that Hellion Vivian had already gone to court in America when she was still in school. Even with Du Cece's outstanding performance in the industry, she might not be able to go to court in America. The gap between them was obvious without a comparison. Du Cece gritted her teeth and forced herself not to show an awkward expression. But how could the two-faced Qingshun let her go? She reached out her little hand and grabbed her brother's hand. She pointed at Du Cece and said, just now, this Annie said that she wants Mom to go to her company to be an assistant. She also wants to introduce the useless men in her company to Mom. She thinks she's better than Mom because Mom doesn't have a degree. Her childish voice sounded like she was complaining. Bailey Shanxia reached out and patted his younger brother's little head. Stupid, he said coolly. I think so too. After little Qingshun finished speaking, he nodded obediently. The two little ones did not hesitate to protect Hellion Vivian. Just a few words were enough to make Du Cece unable to escape. At that moment, Du Cece wished that there was a hole in the ground for her to hide in. She only felt a burning sensation on her face, but she had to smile and explain to Professor Yuan, who was frowning at her. I saw that Wei Wei was working too hard, so I wanted to find a job for her. I didn't expect that she would hide it so well. Oh, now it seems that I was meddling in other people's business. I really didn't expect Wei Wei to be so powerful. Li Ming also wanted to help Du Cece out. After all, they were on the same side, yes. Cece had good intentions. She didn't want to overreach herself. Qingshun, you're still young. You don't understand that this is how old classmates are. When you see that others are not doing well, you want to help them. Now that we know that Wei Wei is so good, we are happy for her. Only Li Ming herself knew how reluctant she was to say those words. Originally, they wanted to make Helly and Vivian be ridiculed after the student union meeting. They wanted Professor Yuan to know that it was a mistake for him to not accept Cece as his disciple. However, they didn't expect that they would be the ones who couldn't free themselves. Not only did Helly and Vivian not disappoint Professor Yuan, but because of Robert's appearance, he looked at Helly and Vivian with a gratified expression. Even the students' gazes changed. Everyone was looking at Helly and Vivian, Cece, and Li Ming. The more they were like this, the more jealousy Li Ming felt. What kind of luck did Helly and Vivian have? Isn't she just a lawyer? Even if she isn't a mechanic, the current her can't be compared to Li Ming and Cece. That's because the men they have are different. After understanding this, Li Ming calmed down. She didn't care about how others were looking at her and Du Cece. She only gave Du Cece a look. Du Cece was smart. She quickly changed her mood and said to Helly and Vivian, Wei Wei, I really wanted to help you. That's why I said that. Also, I didn't understand the situation. You won't blame me, right? This kind of saying was very common in reality. What a woman who stole her best friend's boyfriend would do the most was to say, you won't blame me, right? After hurting someone else. This way of gaining sympathy was very easy to accept. It wasn't because the person involved accepted it, but because the people around them were very tolerant. Wei Wei, we're all old classmates. Cece definitely didn't mean anything else. In fact, everyone knew that Cece didn't mean anything else. However, in this kind of situation, plus Du Cece's identity, no one wanted to make a big deal out of it. It was just because of one sentence. Professor Yuan was protecting Helly and Vivian. His face sank, and he wanted to say something. Helly and Vivian stopped him. Everyone knew that someone as strong as Helly and Vivian wouldn't let an old man stand up for her. After all, she liked to do everything by herself. Chapter 968. However, before Helly and Vivian could do anything, the two little ones tacitly stood in front of her and blocked her path. It will be very ugly when a lie is exposed. The person who spoke was Bailey Shangxia. He was still wearing his leather jacket, and his small face was very cool. He was obviously a child, but when he smiled, he gave off an indescribable evil vibe. Du Cece was amused when she heard this. Even if she had guessed Helly and Vivian's occupation wrongly and wanted to embarrass Helly and Vivian. So what? What kind of lie was this? Annie has just explained that this is all a misunderstanding. Du Cece smiled and reached out to touch Bailey Shangxia's head. Bailey Shangxia moved and took a step back with his brother in his arms. He looked at Du Cece, and it was obvious that he did not want to be close to her. At this point, Du Cece was better at pretending than others. Even if it was embarrassing, she could still make herself look as if nothing had happened. Just like now, after Bailey Shangxia dodged her attack, she did not immediately withdraw her hand. Instead, she turned her head and smiled at Helly and Wei Wei. Wei Wei, look, you're still holding a grudge against me. Okay, it's my fault. Today's expenses will be on me as an apology to Wei Wei. Vivian, since Cece has said so, you shouldn't make things difficult for her. Li Ming turned her head and said to the surrounding students, it's not easy for the teacher to come today. Moreover, they're foreign guests. If you want to play, you should play to your heart's content. As she spoke, she patted Du Cece's arm and said, Cece, quickly ask them to serve the dishes. You have a sharp tongue, but a soft heart. With your family background and appearance, you're already half a person who is going to marry into the Ju group. Yet, you always like to worry about others. Look, there has been a misunderstanding. Du Cece felt wronged. How would I know that others would think of me like this? Those are just children's words. Don't take them seriously. Wei Wei still cares about you, right, Wei Wei? Li Meng looked at Helly and Vivian and smiled faintly. Let's talk about something else. Since the teacher is here, we still don't know what your boyfriend does. Beligaju, who had been called out, had been sitting on the wooden chair, playing with something with his slender fingers. It seemed that he had not said a word since the beginning. But even so, his sense of existence was not exploited in the slightest. After hearing Li Meng's words, Beligaju suddenly curved his thin lips and put the thing that he had been playing with in his hand on the table. If Li Meng had found out what was in his hand, she wouldn't have been so stupid to ask this question. But it was obvious that no matter how rich the Chung family was, it was just an empty shell in terms of education. No matter how many luxury goods they bought, they would not be involved with Italian brands. So, they would not know that the simplest matchbox in Beligaju's hand was worth an ordinary person's monthly salary. Robert noticed the flash of silver light, but he did not say anything. This was because he found this scene to be quite interesting. When Du Cece saw that Beligaju had no intention of speaking, she continued, "Is it inconvenient for you to say it? If that's the case, then we won't make things difficult for you. There's nothing inconvenient about it." His Highness' voice was always pleasant to listen to, especially when he revealed a devilish smile. It made people feel graceful and noble. My company is Ju Wei. This sentence originally had two meanings. However, Du Cece and the others would never think of the second meaning. They would only think that he was just an employee. Wei Wei, why didn't you tell us earlier that your boyfriend works in Ju Wei group? Li Meng looked at Helly and Vivian. If you had told us earlier, we could have asked Cece to talk to her uncle and ask for a promotion for your boyfriend. Du Cece pushed Li Meng, stop talking. Otherwise, Wei Wei will think too much. What's there to think about? You're going to be the lady boss of Ju Wei group in the future. Wei Wei won't be so narrow-minded. Her boyfriend will definitely be willing to be promoted by your uncle, Li Meng said matter-of-factly. Professor Yuan frowned when he heard this. He looked at Helly and Vivian worriedly. Helly and Vivian poured a cup of tea for the old man. She did not say anything and was still as calm as ever. Just when everyone thought that Wei Wei would not speak, she wiped her fingers with a napkin and looked up casually. Lady boss. Li Meng looked at her as if she still didn't understand. Didn't we just say that Cece's blind date is the CEO of Ju Wei Group? Wei Wei, does your boyfriend never talk to you about his company? That's enough, Li Meng. Du Cece held her back and smiled at Helly and Vivian. She acted as if she was the one in charge of Ju Wei Group. I'll tell my uncle about your boyfriend later. If he's really capable, it shouldn't be a problem for him to be promoted. A few female classmates who were trying to curry favor with Du Cece came over when they heard this. Cece, what about us? Can we also work in Ju Wei Group? If it's really not possible, I could be a manager. Isn't it just taking care of celebrities? We can definitely do it. Okay, I'll help you talk to him when the time comes. Du Cece smiled. Helly and Vivian spoke again. An outsider shouldn't be in charge of Ju Wei Group, right? Helly and Vivian said this sentence very slowly. It was so slow that Du Cece narrowed her eyes. Wei Wei, Cece is not an outsider. A female classmate laughed. Although this kind of thing won't happen to you, it's very normal for Cece. When the time comes and everything is settled, you won't say this anymore. Cece, when you get married, you must send an invitation to Wei Wei. Du Cece reached out and ran her fingers through her long hair. Actually, Wei Wei is right. We haven't even started dating yet. I'm indeed still an outsider now. As she spoke, she looked to the side. Where's the waiter? Why isn't he here yet? Call your manager over. Tell him that I'm here. Even if I'm an outsider, I can still order people around. Ju Wei Group service was really good. As soon as Du Cece finished speaking, a waiter walked over. Madam, how can I help you? Du Cece glanced sideways and was very arrogant. Call your manager over. Tell him that my surname is Du. The waiter did not move. He stood there and frowned. Why aren't you going? Du Cece's voice turned cold. In the end, The waiter decided to report to the higher-ups first. Please wait a moment. Chapter 969. Cece, you're amazing. When Cece heard the compliment, she smiled even more happily. She then poured a cup of tea for lecturer Yuan. Lecturer, you could try the grilled duck tongue here later. It's really authentic. As she spoke, she turned her head to Hellion Wei Wei and said, Wei Wei, it's fine if you don't want my help. After all, your boyfriend definitely doesn't want to use my relationship to climb up the social ladder. I understand all these. Before Hellion Vivian could say anything, Beligaju responded with a playful "oh." A hint of mockery could be seen in his eyes. Your relationship? What relationship do you have? Cece still felt that his face was too handsome. She couldn't help but feel weak in her legs. However, she quickly recovered and said in a disdainful tone, You'll know in a while. The reason why she said this was because the waiter had walked in. She wanted to show Hellion Vivian that the distance between them wouldn't change just because of who was better at winning a lawsuit. Her wealth and connections were not something these people could compare to. Compared to Hellion Vivian's boyfriend, who only had looks, the man she would get in the future would be 1 in a million. This was because even if she didn't get him now, she would be able to make decisions in the Emperor Hotel. Thinking of this, Cece raised her chin even higher. She turned her head and looked at the waiter. Is the person I asked you to call here? Yes. The waiter looked at Cece. Madam, the manager you mentioned is no longer in our hotel. The person who came today is our person in charge. When Cece heard the words person in charge, she felt even more proud. It doesn't matter who comes. Let's order the dishes first. Introduce the ingredients today and tell me which one is the freshest. I'm sorry, madam. The person in charge originally had a professional smile on his face. However, when he saw the man in a black trench coat at the end of the private room, his voice trembled. The words he wanted to say were completely stuck in his throat. He must be dreaming. Why would Ju always appear here? Isn't he supposed to be traveling outside? Why didn't anyone tell him that CEO Ju is back? The person in charge's heart was boiling. He wanted to run to Beligaju. However, he didn't know what was going on, and he didn't dare to act rashly. Where's Special Assistant Long? Where's Manager Chi Ling? Where are they? How could he let CEO Ju out alone? Wait a minute. It wasn't just CEO Ju alone. There was also the young Master Devil. What was he holding in his arms? A child about the same age as him? Since when did the demonic young master become so compassionate? He didn't usually have this kind of attitude towards children. No, that was not right. Not only did he not have such an attitude towards children, but he also made adults suffer in the company. Back then, he wanted to leave the corporation as soon as possible and come to Emperor Sky's branch to be in charge of food because of the demonic little young master. In any case, he wasn't going to be in charge of an entertainment company because he hadn't forgotten that the young Master Devil had said that he wanted to enter the entertainment industry. The person in charge turned around and coincidentally saw Bailey Shangxia sitting in the corner with his little brother in his arms. It was obvious that Bailey Shangxia knew the person in charge. When Shadow first brought these humans to him, he had to play with them for a while. Among his toys, this human was quite interesting. If the person in charge knew what Bailey Shangxia was thinking, he would definitely cry. Unfortunately, he was only thinking about why the CEO, who didn't like to go out, would suddenly come to the place he was in charge of for a meal. Could it be that he wasn't satisfied with the recent performance of Emperor Sky Hotel? The person in charge recalled what punishment the previous subordinate who made CEO Ju unhappy received and felt a chill down his spine. Even when Cece called out to him twice, he didn't respond. The waiter had never seen the person in charge lose his composure like this. Was it because the temperature in the private room was too low? Why did he have an illusion that the person in charge's hand was trembling? Director Liang, the guest is calling you. The waiter couldn't help but pull the person in charge's sleeve. The person in charge regained his senses and immediately stood up straight under Beligaju's gaze and said to Cece, I'll prepare the ingredients for you immediately. The person in charge's humble attitude made the other students believe Cece's words without a doubt. They felt that Du Cece was very capable. Du Cece was a little surprised. After all, no matter how powerful her uncle was, he would only ask the manager to come out for a while. It was also her first time meeting the person in charge. She didn't expect that her uncle's position in Ju Wei Group was higher than she expected. The unexpected reward made her feel even more proud as she enjoyed the envious gazes around her. She pointed at the menu with her red finger and said, "Let's have the lobster first. Teacher likes lobsters. Li Meng, take a look and see what you want." She passed the menu to Li Meng as she spoke. The person in charge was about to nod his head and say yes when he saw the man sitting on the seat curling his thin lips. The coldness in his eyes was definitely not satisfactory. In an instant, cold sweat broke out on the person in charge's forehead. Did he do something wrong? But these people were CEO Ju's acquaintances. Did CEO Ju want him to refuse? The person in charge guessed carefully and said tentatively, "I'm sorry, madam. According to our hotel's regulations, the lobster dish must be pre-ordered." Phew, finally. CEO Ju finally moved his gaze away from him. It seemed that he was on the right track this time. Du Cece didn't understand why the person in charge's attitude changed so quickly. The other students were somewhat disappointed as well. "We need a pre-order? I thought that we could eat the freshest lobster with Cece." Du Cece felt a little embarrassed at this time. She closed the menu in her hand and said politely, "I never needed to pre-order before coming here. It's the same this time. Since you're the person in charge of this hotel, you should be an old acquaintance of my uncle. My uncle's surname is Du, and he's one of the higher-ups in Ju Wei Group." Du? When the person in charge heard this surname, he subconsciously looked in the direction of his boss. Was he the one who was banned by CEO Ju during the meeting this morning? Du Cece was puzzled by the person in charge's gaze. "What are you looking at?" The person in charge opened his mouth. What should he say to satisfy CEO Ju? Ju didn't make things difficult for his subordinate. He tilted his head and sat on the wooden chair. His slender fingers twirled Hellion Vivian's long hair. He started to release the coldness that he had been thinking about for a long time with a faint smile. Du Dewey was fired this morning. How can he be considered a higher-up? Chapter 970. What did you say? Du Cece raised her head. She did not intend to accept such an excuse. Her voice was filled with anger. What do you mean by fired? That's impossible. Wei Wei, shouldn't you control your boyfriend in such an occasion? Ask him to watch his words. Not only will he damage my uncle's reputation, but it will also affect the Ju Wei Group. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and was ready to roll up her sleeves to fight. She did not care if she had to use her mouth or her hands. She was not going to let Du Cece off the hook. She was not going to allow anyone to bully His Highness. As an arms tycoon, how could she tolerate others talking about her other half like that? She must show her domineering and mighty aura. Hellion Wei Wei's plan was correct. However, before she could get up, Ju, who was sitting beside her, pressed on her shoulder with one hand and stood up. He casually threw away the matchbox in his hand, leaving only the cigarette between his fingers. He looked at the person in charge not far away. It was obvious that he wanted the person to get over here. The person in charge reacted quickly. When he saw Ju, he immediately walked over and said in a panicked tone, "CEO Ju, I have a fire here. I have a fire here." CEO Ju. These two words seemed to have penetrated everyone's brain. All the students present were stunned, and their thoughts were tangled into a mess. Li Meng looked at the man who was called a poor employee in a daze. Her face was drained of blood. "No, it can't be what I think it is." Du Cece's lips trembled because of the way she was addressed. She slowly turned her head around, and her throat hurt from the pressure. "W, what did you just call him?" The person in charge did not speak. He only looked at Ju respectfully. His expression was still nervous. However, he repeated the name, CEO Ju. The two words were so clear that Du Cece could no longer lie to herself that she had heard wrongly. Her body trembled, and she fell back into the wooden chair. How could this be? How could Hellion Vivian's poor boyfriend be the king of the business world? The person in charge didn't look at her and didn't know what was going on. He was just very confused. Didn't this group of people know CEO Ju? Then why would CEO Ju appear in this private room with them? Ju. CEO Ju. The person in charge stuttered when he spoke again. Beligaju, on the other hand, seemed to be easy to talk to. He reached out and patted him on the shoulder. With the same smile, he said, "Relax? How am I supposed to relax when demons patrol?" The person in charge roared in his heart, but on the surface, he still said respectfully, "Yes, yes, but why are you here? Is there a problem with the hotel's recent performance?" Although he shouldn't have asked this question, the person in charge felt a chill in his heart. Bailey Ju's action of throwing the matchbox just now had scared him out of his wits. That was why he accidentally asked the question that had been bothering him for a long time. Beligaju seemed to be surprisingly easy to talk to today. He reached out and held Hellion Vivian's finger. His other hand flicked the cigarette on his finger. "She is here for a party. I am accompanying her as a family member." "Oh, what?" At first, the person in charge couldn't react. When he came back to his senses, he suddenly looked at Hellion Vivian. Could this be the legendary wife of the CEO? He really wanted to know what kind of secret this is. Beligaju didn't care about the person in charge's expression. After all, he didn't say this sentence for his subordinates to hear. "There is one thing that I'm very curious about." Beligaju seemed to be very indifferent. He glanced at Du Cece's ugly face and said, "Miss Du, didn't you say that you have seen me and even had a meal with me? Why can't you recognize me even though I am standing here?" Just one sentence made Du Cece's whole body tremble. Her face was very pale, and the hand that was holding the menu was trembling. From the beginning, you said that you know Ju Wei Group very well." Beligaju's thin lips curled up. His smile was so perfect that it could almost move everyone. However, no one knew that the more he smiled, the more dangerous it was. "Miss Du, do you know why Ju Wei Group is called Ju Wei Group?" Du Cece couldn't say anything. Since things had come to this, she only wanted to explain. "Ju, CEO Ju, this is all a misunderstanding. The reason why Ju Wei Group is called Ju Wei Group is because my mother is Hellion Vivian and my father is Beligaju." Qingqin's clear voice interrupted Du Cece's words. She looked at her like a little girl. Her face was cold and cute. "Hellion Vivian, Beligaju, Vivian Ju, that's why it's Ju Wei." Some of the female students covered their mouths and looked at Hellion Vivian. At this point, almost everyone understood what was going on. Hellion Vivian was the real lady boss of Ju Wei Group. In fact, she had been the lady boss since the beginning of the company. In a more straightforward way, the reason why Ju Wei Group was established was because CEO Ju wanted to give it to her. It was obvious that Du Cece had lied about this matter. She had never seen Bailey Jiaju before, let alone having a meal with him. Everything was just a lie that she made up for her own vanity. Regardless of whether it was the male or female students, even Professor Yuan, they frowned and looked at Du Cece. Du Cece's face turned pale when she was stared at by those gazes. It shouldn't be like this. How did things turn out like this? She had never been so embarrassed before. Even standing had become a kind of torture. If only a few people knew about this matter, she could just walk away. However, this was a class reunion. Not only were there her old classmates, but many of them were in the same line of work as her. Her tutor was also there. If today's matter were to spread, she would definitely become a joke. It would be a huge joke. This was a loss of reputation that was even more unbearable than death. In the beginning, she and Li Meng had planned to embarrass Hellion Vivian here. It shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be like this. Du Cece's face was red. She reached out and tugged at Li Meng's sleeve, wanting her to say a few words for her. Li Meng did not move. She was still digesting the series of events. She knew that Du Cece was usually very vain. However, she did not think that there was anything wrong with being vain. Therefore, she was willing to cooperate with Du Cece. Both of them were sisters, so their thoughts were the same. However, she did not expect that the poor man they were mocking was the CEO of Ju Wei Group. What should I do? What should I do now? Chapter 971. Li Meng panicked. She opened her mouth, but did not know what to say. Left with no choice, Du Cece could only turn her head and ask the few female students who had been following her and fawning over her to say something. However, those people were obviously worse than Li Meng. They avoided Du Cece's gaze, trying to reduce their presence as much as possible. Bailey Shangxia looked at the scene and slowly sneered. Auntie, I told you from the beginning that lies will be very ugly when they are exposed. Du Cece did not know who to look at. She only realized how wrong she was. She did not expect that she would be caught red-handed just because she said something a little too big as usual. How was she going to clean up this mess? You want to be the lady boss? Bailey Shangxia's little face was very cool and his words were very cold. At such a young age, he seemed to be able to make decisions. What a joke. The legal person of Zhu Wei Group is not my father, but my mother. My father is just an employee. Although it was not the right time to say this. As a younger brother who knew his brother very well, Qin Shan could hear the disdain in Bailey Shangxia's words towards his father. But, legal person? Qin Shan was no stranger to this word. Her big eyes looked at Hellion Vivian as if to ask, when did you become the legal person? Hellion Vivian also wanted to know, so she simply turned to His Highness who was still destroying the enemy and asked, when did I become the legal person of Zhu Wei Group? This morning, the Ligaju felt that at this time, seeing this face would greatly reduce his lethality. He directly pulled her away and said, betrothal gift. Oh, Hellion Wei Wei replied. Then, she turned around and said to little Qin Shun, he said it's a betrothal gift, but I'm not very interested in the film company. What if it goes bankrupt? It's okay. Qin Shun said very cutely, we can sell it when the time comes. Sell it. The hotel manager, who was listening at the side, was confused. Little young master, do you know how profitable Zhu Wei Group is? Do you know how much Zhu Wei Group's stock price has skyrocketed? How could he have the thought of selling it? Madam is such a beautiful and intelligent person. She will definitely not agree. With this thought in mind, the hotel manager looked at Hellion Vivian with sparkling eyes. Hellion Vivian seemed to think about it for a while. She looked very serious, as though she was rejecting the idea. However, to the person in charge of surprise, she actually smiled and said brightly, son, this is a really good idea. The hotel manager. How is this idea good? Bailey Shangxia glanced at the hotel manager coolly. You don't think Qingshan's idea is good? The person in charge of the hotel originally wanted to say what was in his heart, but in this line of work, the most important thing was to be very observant, so when the words came to his mouth, he immediately changed his mind. I think this idea is very good. That's right, very good. Sob, 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 I'm about to cry. Bailey Shangxia nodded in satisfaction and warned him seriously. Qingshan's idea is good. Yes, yes. The hotel manager thought to himself, this devil young master who is obsessed with his brother is really crazy. After such a commotion, the hostility in Beligaju's eyes finally subsided. He looked at Hellion Vivian helplessly and sighed in his heart, but there was no expression on his face. Come here. Hellion Vivian walked over with a smile, only to hear him ask in a low voice, you don't want me to kill anyone? There's no need to let the other party die. It's too bloody. Hellion Vivian was telling the truth. Although she was not a kind person, she had noticed the unstable hostility in His Highness from the beginning. She did not know if it was because of the tearing of time and space. From her point of view, she did not care what kind of punishment Du Cece would receive. She was also a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. What she cared about was the man in front of her. If she could not kill him, then she would. The Ligaju looked at the pair of smiling eyes. He never believed that good would be rewarded with good, and evil would be repaid with evil. So he looked down on gods and Buddhists. When reading poems, there would always be such a sentence, quiet is the style of a gentleman, restrained and silent, silent and peaceful. He rarely explicitly opposed something, and his thoughts were always hidden in his heart. However, he was not a modest gentleman. In order to get what he wanted, he had been using schemes and tricks all along the way. He did not think that schemes were a derogatory term. Schemes and tricks were all desirable, as long as he could get what he wanted in the end. No matter what method he used, it was all the same. Since she did not want him to kill, then he would not kill. However, he still wanted to destroy the Du family inch by inch. Beligaju turned around and glanced at Du Cece. The smile on his face had faded away, and it was replaced by a coldness that came from his bones. He only curled his lips slightly, but he did not directly deal with Du Cece. Instead, he said to the person in charge of the hotel, "Go and tell Qin Long to hand in all the evidence of the Du family's bribery over the years. Since she is staying in the courtyard, then get her down. I can't stand people who are arrogant in front of me the most." He said it in a very casual manner. However, Du Cece could not stay any longer. She pushed the chair away and said loudly, Are you trying to destroy the Du family? You can't do that." Beligaju smiled perfectly, but his eyes were so cold that it seemed like there were knives hidden in them. "Miss Du, you are so good at making up stories. You almost made Wei Wei think that I had an affair, and even my son wanted to run away from home with his mother and younger brother. You're trying to destroy my family, so why can't I let the Du family go down a dead end?" Du Cece knew this man's ability. She had always known that he had the ability to rule over a city. That was why she was so proud when her uncle said that he wanted to introduce her to this man. The Du family would definitely not have a good ending in his hands. Thinking of this, Du Cece turned her head and tried to lower herself. Her face was full of tears. "Wei Wei, we are all old classmates. Don't be so ruthless. If I knew that your boyfriend was CEO Ju, I would never have said those words. I really never thought of destroying anything." She believed that as long as she said that, there would be a chance for her to survive. Helly and Vivian had to at least consider the situation now. If she was too ruthless in a class reunion, it would not look good on anyone. You don't have the ability to destroy, but it's not that you never thought of it. Hellion Wei Wei's gaze was indifferent as she stood against the light. "I've always disliked anyone who has designs on my man. So Du Cece, stop acting. You're not as innocent as you make yourself out to be when you're lying about my man." The last sentence made Du Cece, who was still thinking that she could get away with it, completely freeze. Chapter 972. Everyone present was a student of the law. Basically, everyone understood the meaning behind Helly and Vivian's words without much thought. Du Cece was obviously trying to seduce him, but now that she was exposed, she said that she didn't do it on purpose. Thinking of this relationship, the surrounding students looked at Du Cece with condemnation instead of awkwardness. Basically, anyone who didn't follow such a woman would hate her, regardless of how powerful and influential she was or whether she was an old classmate. Everyone would hate this kind of woman from the bottom of their hearts. After all, anyone would be wary of a woman with the potential to be a mistress. Du Cece didn't expect that her words of retreating to advance would not help her break free from the situation just now. Instead, she fell into an even more embarrassing situation because of Helly and Vivian's words. Du Cece looked at the surrounding people, sizing her up. Her face was so red that she couldn't stay there any longer. Biting her thin lips, she ran out of the private room in a panic. Outside the Emperor Hotel, she didn't know who called in the reporters, but they surrounded her in the middle. "Miss Du, I heard that your law firm deliberately lost the case after accepting it just to help some black-hearted businessmen bully the migrant workers. Is that true? Don't you feel uneasy by always helping such people? Miss Du, please answer the question. Have you ever thought about those who have difficulties in getting money? When they finally gathered enough money to sue these black-hearted businessmen, you used the dirtiest means to block their only hope. Don't you feel guilty at all? As a lawyer, you accepted money and deliberately lost the case. Isn't this against the most basic professional ethics?" Du Cece didn't expect to face such questions as soon as she stepped out of the hotel. Because she was caught off guard, she froze on the spot. Her pale face was exposed. No one should know what she did. Those stupid migrant workers didn't know anything. After the case was over, they even sent her smelly local specialties, saying that they were grateful to her even if they lost the case. Who was it that exposed this to the reporters? No matter how well Du Cece hid it, her spoiled temper was still there. She screamed and threw her bag on the ground like a shrew. "Shut up, all of you! All of you shut up! This scene completely destroyed the image that Du Cece had worked so hard to maintain. There was a TV in a luxurious private room. It was the clearest live broadcast. Many students couldn't help but shake their heads and sigh in their hearts. Helene Vivian poked the man sitting next to her and said in a low voice, "You've been holding back for this scene, haven't you? How could that be?" Beligaju laughed. His eyes were filled with the dark aura unique to demons. If she didn't claim to be the mistress of the Ju Wei group, she wouldn't have to embarrass herself. Besides, I don't like to make things difficult for a woman. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows. When did His Highness become so kind? He added with a smile, "If you want to make things difficult for them, then make things difficult for their entire family." Helene Vivian, Li Meng was still trying to clear Du Cece's name. "I didn't expect Du Cece to be so stupid." Professor Yuan looked directly at her. For the first time, his voice was filled with displeasure. "This isn't called stupid. This is called asking for it. If anyone dares to do such a thing in the future, don't say that you graduated from university. Not only will you embarrass the university, but you will also embarrass your classmates. Accepting bribes and purposely losing the case. This is the worst lawyer I've ever seen. In the United States, if this kind of thing is exposed, you will go to jail," Robert said seriously. It was not difficult to see that he was against this matter. The smile on Li Meng's face froze after being slapped in the face by the two most authoritative people. She could only shut her mouth obediently. However, she didn't expect that when she raised her head, she would meet Bailey Jiaju's gaze. It was so deep that it made people's hearts beat faster. He curled his thin lips at her. That kind of smile could make anyone fall for him. Li Meng had always boasted that she was good-looking. Even after she got married, she was pursued by many men. After all, she was petite, had fair skin, and was very particular about her dressing. Moreover, her current situation and expression made her look a little pitiful. She looked back at Beligaju with a pitiful gaze. She looked like she wanted to say something, but stopped herself. Li Meng did not think that she was wrong, because she was not the one who made up the lie. At most, she just wanted to teach Helene Vivian a lesson. Therefore, even if something happened, it would not spread to her. What's more, she raised her head and looked at Bailey Jiaju again. Every man had a tender heart. Moreover, the man smiled at her just now. Thinking of this, Li Meng could not help but have other thoughts in her mind. She looked at Beligaju again. At this time, the other students had already started to order their food. After all, it was not easy to have a gathering, so they would not disperse just like that. However, the atmosphere was obviously not as lively as before. Everyone lowered their heads to study the menu, so no one saw this scene. Even Helene Vivian was worried about what to eat. For a foodie like her, eating was indeed something worth worrying about. The two little ones sat on two small chairs. Bailey Shangxia reached out and pressed the menu for Qingchen, allowing her to choose whatever she wanted. There was no doubt that he was a young master. He instructed the person in charge to get a glass of milk for his younger brother first. He tested the temperature first before feeding Qingchen the cup. He raised his head and saw this scene. His little mouth moved coolly, and he only spat out two words. Stupid. Inexplicably, Qingchen did not know who her older brother was talking about. She raised her little head from the menu. Bailey Shangxia pressed down the stray hair on his younger brother's head and reached out to touch Qingchen. His little face was still cool. It's okay. Continue to order what you want to eat. You can also order what isn't on the menu. I'll get them to buy it. The person in charge was speechless. He was indeed a brother Khan. He had never seen the devil young master speak so much and so patiently to anyone. Under normal circumstances, the standard was 1 to 2 words. For example, scram, annoying, and stupid. When such a child first went to the company, everyone thought that CEO Ju used to be a gangster. This was because the devil young master was too similar to the Italian mafia. The aura he exuded did not belong to an ordinary 3-year-old boy at all. Moreover, this child's IQ was very high. He was able to play around with adults like them. Whenever he said the word stupid, it meant that someone was going to be unlucky. Chapter 973. Li Meng didn't notice the danger. She was still thinking about how to ease the tension between them. She should be able to get closer to that man during the toast. Beligaju smiled again, but the evil aura around him was getting stronger. Helly and Vivian looked up in confusion. What's wrong? Nothing. Beligaju held Little Phoenix's left hand and held it in his palm. Helly and Vivian followed him and pointed at the menu with her right hand. Grilled beef fillet? Your favorite. Do you want it? I don't want to eat beef today. Beligaju's voice was very calm. It's just ordinary meat. You don't have to do anything with it. Just throw it into your mouth and eat a few bites. It's not interesting. Helly and Vivian skipped this dish and put her finger on the lobster. What about this dish? It's spicy. It should be very appetizing. You can peel it before eating. It's troublesome to peel it. Beligaju put one hand behind Helly and Vivian's chair. Their posture was very natural, but there was an indescribable intimacy between them. Helly and Vivian smiled and poked his face. I'll peel it for you. Do you want it? Okay. Bailey Jia smiled for real this time. There was only gentleness left in his pair of long and narrow eyes. The person in charge was stunned. He didn't expect CEO Ju to be like this when he was in a relationship. How should he put it? He was beating around the bush just to let his wife peel the lobster for him. This was a little shameless. Bailey Shanxie was used to his father's shamelessness. He didn't even look at them. He handed the chopsticks and spoon to Qingchen. Then, he stood there and lowered his head to tie a napkin for his younger brother. He looked very serious. Professor Yuan smiled. Wei Wei, you taught these two kids well. Come, tell Grandpa, what do you want to do when you grow up? Make money. When Qingchen said these two words, she was very much like a little gentleman. She was still holding the milk that her brother gave her, and her voice was soft and cold. Professor Yuan paused for a moment. Make money? Yes. Qingchen said seriously. Big Brother is going to be an actress in the future. This is very expensive, and there will be many people who will take advantage of him. In order to let Big Brother focus on being an actress, I have to work hard to earn money so that I can prevent him from being taken advantage of. Professor Yuan, is this considered a career goal? Also, is it really good for you to know about the unspoken rules at such a young age? And who the hell is that actress? Bailey Shanxia's little face was very cool, but there were too many things going on in his heart. For example, no child in the world was as sensible, well-behaved, and considerate as his little brother, etc. The person in charge calmly understood the demon young master's thoughts from the smile on his face. For the nth time, he wanted to put his hand on his forehead. Although it's not the right time to talk about this, but little young master, do you think anyone would dare to follow the rules of the little young master devil? They would be completely silenced. Bailey Shanxie ignored the person in charge's complaints and took a tissue to wipe Qingchen's mouth. He still felt that his little brother was very considerate, so he simply hugged Qingchen's little head and kissed it. That action was so cute. The female students excitedly tugged at Helly and Vivian's hand. Wei Wei, why are your two sons so obedient? Ours are not. They hit each other when they see each other. Tell us, how did you teach them? You should teach them to us too. Speaking of this, Helly and Vivian still felt guilty because in her memory, Qingchen had never needed her to teach him. He had always been very obedient. As for Shanxie, other than the fact that he liked to eat humans when he was hungry, he was very responsible the rest of the time. Therefore, Helly and Vivian had no choice but to put the issue of education aside. Shanxie has always been taken care of by Jiaju. CEO Ju still has time to take care of child? Li Ming's eyes widened as she looked at Beligaju with watery eyes. This is really unexpected. I should ask my old Chung to take a good look at him. He usually does business with CEO Ju, but he doesn't learn how to teach a child. Bailey Jiaju's fingers were still entwined with Helly and Wei Wei's long hair, while his other hand casually wiped the corner of his lips. His voice was slow, and it was unusually pleasing to the ears. Don't worry, he will see it very soon. Hearing such a voice, Li Ming couldn't help but blush. She wanted to see more of Beligaju. However, she realized that the person in charge was standing there. She didn't know if it was intentional or not, but he blocked her view just like that. Li Ming was angry, but it was fine. When her old Chung came later, they would definitely be able to talk. Counting the time, her old Chung should be here by now. Wasn't it just taking Chung Chung to the bathroom? Why'd he take so long? The dishes were about to be served. Li Meng took out her phone and wanted to make a call to urge him. The door of the private room was pushed open. Her husband walked in with little fatty Chung in his arms. Just as he was about to complain that there were too many people outside and it wasn't easy for him to come in, he saw the man sitting at the dining table. In just an instant, his expression changed from gloomy to cheerful. I was wondering why there were so many reporters outside. It turns out that CEO Ju is here. CEO Ju, you are? I'm here for dinner. Beligaju's voice was very calm, and the corners of his mouth were curled into a smile. Li Meng was very good at seizing the opportunity. She pulled her husband over and didn't even introduce Helene Vivian. Instead, she said to him, "Old Chung, you see, this is fate. Shouldn't we toast CEO Ju?" Of course, of course. Old Chung picked up the wine glass on his seat without hesitation and led his son and wife toward Beligaju. Ching Chun and Bailey Shangxia were sitting beside Beligaju, blocking little Fatty Cheng's path. Little Fatty Cheng was very arrogant. He didn't dare to provoke Bailey Shangxia, but he felt that he had made Ching Chun suffer before this. Naturally, he became fearless. He scolded Ching Chun in a low voice, "Little country bumpkin, get out of my way." Bam! Bailey Shangxia didn't even give the surrounding people time to react. He grabbed little Fatty Chung by the collar and pressed him on the table with one hand. Although he was small, the smile on his face was bloodthirsty. "Who are you calling a country bumpkin? I dare you to call me that again." Everyone was stunned by Bailey Shangxia's action. Li Meng was the first to react. "What happened? Shangxia, what's wrong? Did my Chung Chung make you unhappy? Let me apologize to you on behalf of my Chung Chung." "Okay." She could tell from the beginning that Bailey Shangxia was the closest to CEO Ju. She had to let Chung Chung build a good relationship with him. Chung Chung was also very scared. He was actually a coward. He had always bullied people in school because of his family's power. He didn't know that Bailey Shangxia and Ching Chun were brothers. Little Fatty Cheng's memory was still stuck in the impression that these two people didn't get along well. Therefore, he didn't expect that the one who flipped out at him would be Bailey Shangxia. Manager Chung was also someone who had been in the business world for a long time. When he heard what Li Meng said, his face turned even greener than if he had eaten a worm. Li Meng still wanted to say something. However, Manager Chung had already pulled her back and gave her a furious slap. Li Meng's face was almost disfigured by this slap. She loved to show off how well her husband treated her in front of her classmates. She could not stand those who were still unmarried. Even when Helene Vivian did not explicitly say that she had a boyfriend, she would intentionally or unintentionally spread the news in front of others. She just wanted to say that there was something wrong with Helene Vivian's way of doing things. But now, it was clear who the one with the wrong way of doing things was. Little Fatty Chung, who was standing at the side, was scared out of his wits. He didn't understand why his father was so angry. He just stood there, trembling. Even when his mother, who was the one who protected him the most, was beaten, he didn't say a word. Professor Yuan, who was standing at the side, saw clearly that this child was very rude and unreasonable when it came to bullying his peers. However, he was extremely cowardly when it came to his family. There was no saving him. No one in this family, from old to young, could compare to Helene Vivian's family. Indeed, no one was more obsessed with his younger brother than Bailey Shangxia. When he thought of little Fatty Cheng's reaction just now, he was filled with anger. Bailey Shangxia glanced at the person in charge beside him and said coolly, "Throw this family out. Also, tell the reporters outside that Ju Wei Group will announce a new successor in 3 days." A new successor? The person in charge looked in the direction of his boss. When he saw that Beligaju's expression did not change at all, he could only ask meekly, "Who is it?" Bailey Shangxia did not beat around the bush. He carried his younger brother forward and said coolly, "Him." The person in charge's mouth twitched as he met Chingchen's eyes. He reached out and held his head. He had a premonition that there would be a bloodbath in Ju Wei Group. "Little young master, you're so obsessed with your younger brother." This time, Li Meng tasted humiliation that she had never tasted before. She was chased out of the hotel like this. Her husband was cursing and swearing at her as he walked away, demanding a divorce. She was just reaping what she sowed. Bailey Chanchier retracted his gaze from the family and carefully placed Qin Chun back on the chair. His younger brother was drinking his milk obediently. Who did he offend? Why did he call Qin Chun a country bumpkin for no reason? If mother was not here, he would have gone on a killing spree and crushed all their souls. A bunch of stupid humans. However, he had just estimated that the punch would be enough to make little Fatty Chung suffer for a week. Little Fatty Chung was indeed in a lot of pain. This brat's first reaction was to call his grandfather and complain. Chapter 975. Although little Fatty was a coward, he had learned from his mother. He could hit others, but others could not hit him. He made this call behind Li Meng's back. This was because little Fatty Chung was scared out of his wits when he walked out of the hotel. His father kept saying that he wanted to divorce his mother. He had never seen his father so angry before. Little Fatty Chung cried when the call went through. He said that his parents were fighting and that he was bullied by his classmates. He wanted his grandfather to help him. Everyone knew that the Li family only had one daughter, so his grandson was Li Qingzhu's treasure. As soon as he heard that his grandson was bullied, Li Qingzhu immediately couldn't stand it. He was originally in charge of education, so of course, his temper was not small. Tell Grandpa, is the child who bullied you the country bumpkin you mentioned last time? Little Fatty Chung kept saying yes. He cried until he hiccuped. Li Qingzhu scolded him in a low voice and said, Chung Chung, tell me where you are. I will ask someone to pick you up. Are your parents still there? Yes, sob, sob, sob. Emperor Hotel. Grandpa, come quickly. Little Fatty Chung cried and hung up the phone. He wanted to return the punch to his face. His mother had told him that if it was his grandfather, he would definitely make sure that all of them could not go to school. Even if they were rich, they would not be able to win against an official. Li Qingzhu stared at his phone that had been hung up on. He immediately called the kindergarten and reprimanded the principal. Only then did he feel a little better. However, his voice was still unhappy. I'm telling you, I'm transferring that hellion Qin Chang guy to another school today. What kind of students are you taking in? She has no manners at all. The principal kept apologizing, but he still did his duty. Is there a misunderstanding between the two kids? Why don't I ask Qing Xin to apologize to Changqing? Principal Dong, children can be forgiven if they make a mistake once or twice. However, if they make too many mistakes, I, as a deputy minister, will doubt whether you are fit to be in your current position. Li Qingzhu was obviously using his status to pressure the principal. After he finished speaking, he did not wait for the principal to reply and hung up the phone. He believed that the other party would weigh the pros and cons of this matter. How could a little country bumpkin compare with his Chung Chung? You should check if he was qualified. Li Qingzhu stood up from his chair and was about to go out to pick up his grandson when the phone on the table rang again. He did not pay much attention to it. He thought it was Principal Dong. He picked up the phone. Have you decided? Fire him as soon as possible. Deputy Minister Li. A familiar chuckle came from the microphone. Every word was oppressive to the listener's nerves. Who do you want to fire? Li Qingzhu's eyes suddenly shook and his voice became unsteady. Young Master Tang. Ha! The man casually rested his slender legs on a desk. The light shone through the large floor-to-ceiling window onto his well-ironed military boots, looking unusually sharp. I just received a piece of information from the Ju Wei group today about you accepting bribes. Originally, I wanted to wait for 2 or 3 days before taking action, but your attitude inexplicably made me want to push the schedule forward. Li Qingzhu's lips turned pale. No, young Master Tang, listen to me. You thought it was Principal Dong who called you? The man interrupted his stuttering. He played with a thin cigarette with his fingers. He seemed to be smiling, but his eyes were cold. Li Qingzhu, don't you know that Hellion Qingchun is under the Tang sect's protection? Oh, right, you don't seem to know, but it doesn't matter. As long as I know that your grandson often calls him a country bumpkin and you want Principal Dong to fire him, it's fine. A bolt from blue. Li Qingzhu fell back into the wooden chair. When he looked up again, someone had already handcuffed him. He had always known that anyone who fell into the hands of the Tang sect would not have a good ending. But he didn't know that anyone who provoked His Highness would basically be destroyed. In the office, the man tilted his head and lit a cigarette. He smiled and instructed the person beside him, "Go and reply to CEO Ju. Tell him that I hope our future cooperation can be as pleasant. Also, tell him that it's impossible to guard against a love rival at a class reunion. When a fox befriended a demon, the degree of black-bellied was often double." Beligaju looked at the message on his phone. When he saw the word love rival, he raised his eyebrows. "Why aren't you eating?" Hellion Vivian was still working hard to peel crayfish. When she looked up, she saw that His Highness had stopped. His handsome face seemed a little cold. Beligaju smiled and held Hellion Vivian's hand. He opened his mouth and ate the crayfish. His voice was low. "Nothing. I was afraid that you would be tired from peeling crayfish." "I'm not tired." Hellion Vivian lowered her voice and whispered in his ear, "This is what an arms tycoon should do. But can you eat the ones on the plate that are already peeled? Don't bite my fingers so often. Our classmates are watching. It's not good." That way, Bailey Jia Ju could almost see the wagging tail behind her back. Therefore, his little phoenix often confused her position, which was also a very wonderful thing. "Vivian, let me toast to you." Xiao Zifeng stood up from his chair. He was good-looking, and even his posture was eye-catching. The corner of his mouth was very gentle, and there were too many emotions brewing in his deep eyes. "If anyone treats you badly in the future, you can come and find me at any time." Hellion Vivian choked on the crayfish in her mouth. Why did this sound a little weird? However, Hellion Vivian could still feel the kindness shown by the other party. She also stood up and was about to speak with a wine glass in her hand. Someone put an arm around her shoulder. It was Beligaju. His smile didn't change at all, and he was still as elegant as ever. "You don't have to drink this wine, Vivian, because she will never have that chance." "Is that so?" Xiao Zifeng smiled faintly and looked up. His words were very meaningful. "There are always some things in the world that people can't control, but I still wish CEO Ju good luck." Beligaju's thin lips curled slightly. "Compared to some people who want something but can't get it, I am indeed very lucky." Xiao Zifeng's fingers tightened, and he didn't say anything else. It was all because His Highness' words were too harsh. Hellion Wei Wei was at a loss as she listened at the side. She couldn't help but admit that in certain aspects, she was still very slow. "I keep feeling that this Xiao Zifeng's words are weird." As soon as they sat down, Hellion Vivian quietly shared her thoughts with a certain someone. After all, she was still very observant. "The two little ones, don't insult the word observant. No matter what, as long as you mention that name, Dad will definitely flip out." Chapter 976. However, what the two little ones did not expect was that Beligaju did not get angry after hearing the sharing. Instead, he laughed and began to analyze the situation seriously with Hellion Vivian. His eyes shone. "Do you feel that there's hostility in his words?" Hellion Vivian nodded. Beligaju let out a long sigh. "Obviously, he doesn't want us to grow old together, just like your female classmates just now." "But why?" Hellion Vivian did not understand. "When we were in school, he was quite nice to me." "Quite nice." Bailey Jia Ju's hand tightened. He didn't care about the change in the shape of the napkin in his palm at all. On the contrary, the more he smiled, the more charming he became. "Probably it's because of me. You should be able to understand that my appearance always brings a lot of unnecessary troubles." "You mean?" Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes. "I understand." Beligaju wiped the corner of his mouth. "I think I should make it clearer." "No need." Hellion Vivian held his hand very overbearingly. She looked at Xiao Zifeng, who was not far away, and shook her head pitifully. "Why didn't I think of it before? When we were in school, he didn't have a girlfriend. I heard that he hasn't been in a relationship until now. So this is the reason why." The two little ones looked at each other and then began to whisper, "Brother, the reason that Hellion Vivian thinks of can't be what I think it is, right? It's very possible. Dad is too shameless. Usually, when he blackmails someone, he's very ruthless. Bailey Shangxia had a cool expression on his little face. He felt more and more that he should keep his younger brother away from his father. The telepathy between the three of them was very accurate. Beligaju could not be more clear about what the two little ones were thinking. He gave his two sons a warning look and then retracted his gaze. His voice was very calm, as if he was stating a very normal thing. Vivian, this is a man's private matter after all. He probably doesn't want others to know. Don't worry, I understand. As Hellion Vivian spoke, she put the piece of beef that His Highness had given her into her mouth. She continued in a low voice, Actually, it's normal for men to like men nowadays. He doesn't have to suppress himself at all. The two little ones, as expected, His Highness was very satisfied with Hellion Vivian's conclusion. He smiled and fed his little phoenix. Although the beginning of the meal was a little dramatic, the people who came to attend the class reunion were very happy after that. What's more, the Emperor Sky Hotel even specially made a cake for them. The cake was actually filled with all of their names. Professor Yuan was a good teacher. He treated all of his students very well. At the end of the session, he reached out and patted them on the shoulder. He had a gratified expression on his face that said, My child is grown up. Originally, Robert wanted to catch up with Hellion Vivian. However, after observing the situation just now, his intuition as a lawyer told him that he should not strike up a conversation with Vivian in front of a certain man. Therefore, Robert cleverly chose to retreat with Professor Yuan. Some students wanted to stay and continue singing. It was rare for them to be so happy. Xiao Zifeng looked at the woman standing in the crowd and chuckled wantonly. He felt that he had to make a final effort no matter what, although he had already decided to give them his blessings. However, if he could make that man feel uneasy at the end, he should know how to cherish Vivian more. Xiao Zifeng looked up and pressed the cigarette in his hand into the ashtray. Then, he walked over to Hellion Vivian. Can we talk in private? After His Highness's advice just now, Hellion Vivian's feelings toward Xiao Zifeng were very complicated. She struggled for a few seconds before she nodded generously. Okay. At that time, Beligaju was signing the bill. The person in charge had brought it over. If the bill was waived, it had to be personally signed by the president. However, the two little ones were very confused. Why didn't their father stop them from talking in private? Dad, you don't want to tell me that you're showing off your gentlemanly demeanor right now. In Bailey Shangxia's mind, his father had always been sinister and cunning. There was no gentleman to speak of at all. Beligaju sat there with his legs slightly crossed. He placed a high-end fountain pen that felt very good on the table and said slowly, What's wrong? Is it strange? It's very strange. Qingchen nodded. She hugged the devil plushie and approached Beligaju. She stared at her father with her big eyes, trying to figure out something from him. Beligaju smiled. His fingers lazily supported his chin. His eyes flashed slightly. Someone wants to make him completely give up. This little time alone can still be given to him. Bailey Shangxia couldn't guess his father's thoughts. He simply turned his head and held his brother's hand. He decided to personally see what his mother and that guy with the surname Xiao were talking about. It was very easy for the two little ones to hide. As long as they squatted there like little mushrooms, they could basically hear the conversation in the corridor. Wei Wei. Xiao Zifeng looked at the starry sky outside the corridor. The corners of his mouth were gentle, and even his voice was lower than usual. There's something that I've thought about for a long time and decided to tell you. Hellion Vivian's eyes lit up. She thought to herself, is it coming just like that? When Xiao Zifeng turned around, he saw Hellion Vivian's gaze. Although he didn't understand why she was so excited, he felt that this was the person he had always liked. Until now, she hadn't changed. She clearly had a queen-like face, but for some reason, she always gave off a hairy feeling. Just say what you want to say. Hellion Vivian felt that at this time, she should enlighten him. But don't force yourself. Okay. Xiao Zifeng stared at those beautiful eyes that were like stars. He could clearly hear the sound of his own heartbeat. He had overestimated himself and couldn't help but like her. Actually, Hellion Vivian was a secret agent. She could clearly feel the strong uneasiness in the other party. Her heart softened in the end, and she softly interrupted him. I know what you want to say. You know? Xiao Zifeng was shocked, and his eyes started to shake. Hellion Vivian solemnly replied with an then reached out and patted him on the shoulder. It's not your fault that there's something wrong with your sexual orientation. I'll keep this a secret for you. I know that you want to tell me this because you treat me as a friend. Just now, Ju also reminded me that you would probably look for me. What I mean is, no matter whether you like men or women, as long as you don't steal my man, I'll be your friend and support you. You're touched. Hellion Vivian thought proudly. She finally had good friends in school. In the past, they were all her good buddies. This school hunk Xiao really thought so highly of himself. His Highness was right. The two little ones were speechless. Chapter 977. Xiao Zifeng was petrified when he heard Hellion Vivian's words. He wanted to explain himself. However, it was obvious that Hellion Wei Wei was too considerate. She merely said, "You don't have to say anything else, I understand." Even his escape route was blocked. In the end, Xiao Zifeng could only look at Hellion Vivian. He reached out his hand and pressed the stray hair in front of his forehead. He seemed to be smiling, but more than that, he said helplessly, "Hellion Vivian, you don't have to be too touched." Hellion Vivian patted his shoulder seriously again. Xiao Zifeng almost vomited blood when he heard that. "You think I'm touched? Aren't you touched? Then why do you look like you're about to cry?" Hellion Vivian sighed after she finished speaking. "The hearts of the people below are so fragile." "I understand." Xiao Zifeng's expression began to crack. "The ones below? Don't you guys have a hierarchy when you're with other guys?" Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. "You don't have to be so surprised. There are many overseas. I've seen them all." Xiao Zifeng was about to break down. "What have you seen? Who said that I'm the one below? Not the one below? Then you're the one above." Hellion Vivian shook her head pitifully. "Then why do you keep looking at Ju? Even if I'm not here, you won't be able to suppress him." Xiao Zifeng was speechless. He had never thought of suppressing a guy. "Okay. I don't." Xiao Zifeng wanted to clear the misunderstanding. "Mr. Xiao." A graceful and elegant voice sounded from the corner. The man stood there, holding Bailey Shangxia with one hand. He looked at him with an elegant smile. "Sorry, I didn't want to disturb you guys. However, he's sleepy and wants a look for Hellion Vivian." Bailey Shangxia's eyes lit up. He did not look sleepy at all. However, due to the great demon king's lower gaze, he could only stretch out his little paw and rub his face, pretending to be very tired. He snorted coldly in his heart. "Using me as an excuse again, there is no such thing as the most shameless imperial father. Only more shameless." Of course, Xiao Zifeng knew that the man did it on purpose. Especially after talking to Hellion Vivian, he realized how cunning the man was. He wanted to say something to Hellion Vivian, but Vivian obviously thought that the conversation was over. Even after everyone left, he sent a message to Hellion Vivian to explain that he did not like men. Hellion Vivian only replied, "Don't worry, I won't say anything." In short, she was sure that he liked men. Xiao Zifeng did not give up. He lowered his head and began to type word by word. At this moment, in the busiest villa area in the capital, Beligaju looked at the person in his arms who had just replied to his WeChat message and was waiting for the next one. A cold light flashed in his deep eyes. He then said nonchalantly, "Vivian." "Yes." Hellion Vivian looked up with a biscuit in her mouth. Beligaju smiled faintly. "There's marinated beef in the fridge on the first floor. Are you hungry?" "Marinated beef?" Hellion Vivian's eyes lit up. Beligaju curved his thin lips. "That's right. It's marinated beef. I'll eat it." Hellion Vivian immediately stood up and was very happy. "I didn't expect that there would be marinated beef in this cold place. I'll go down and get it now." Beligaju closed the business magazine in his hand and said faintly, "I'll hold the phone for you. Help me get a glass of red wine while you're at it." "Okay." Hellion Vivian was only smiling at the marinated beef. She smiled and threw the phone to someone. Then she stretched and went downstairs like a cat that had just gotten food. At that time, Bailey Shangxia was playing with blocks with his younger brother. When Hellion Wei Wei came downstairs, he curled his lips coolly and said, "I don't remember there being any spiced beef in the fridge." Other than wine and blood, there was nothing else in the fridge. Bailey Jiaju did not pay attention to his son's provocation. He leisurely picked up the teacup by his hand and lowered his head to take a sip. His slender fingers slid open the phone screen and looked at the new message. Wei Wei, maybe you'll never know. There was a person who was supposed to be studying business, but because he saw you in a debate, he transferred to university's law department. At that time, you always came to class alone. You liked to sit by the window and look out the window. It's easy to like you. Maybe it's because I'm too conceited. I thought that you would notice me as long as I sat behind you. But other than academic discussions, you rarely turn around to look at me. So when I saw you smile at me for the first time, I knew that I was the one who had fallen for you. Wei Wei, I like you. Although it's too late to say this now, I still want to tell you that if he doesn't treat you well, you can look for me anytime. Bailey Jiaju looked at the WeChat messages that were sent to him one by one. His fingers paused, but he did not reply in a hurry. Instead, he waited for the other party to stop typing. After another minute, he finally typed 3 words. She's not here. The woman he had a crush on for many years thought that he was gay. Student Hunk Zhao's heart started to cry. He sent a second message, a third message, and even a 5th one. He typed many words to confess and fidgeted uneasily. Seconds felt like years as he waited for an answer. But all he got was, she's not here. She wasn't here. That meant that someone was using Helene Vivian's phone. As for who this person was, it was obvious at a glance. Student Hunk Xiao was completely silent. He felt that there was no other person in the world who was more miserable than him. He just wanted to confess properly. Why was it so difficult? At this time, in the villa, Helene Wei Wei was still doubtfully sizing up the internal structure of the huge refrigerator in the kitchen. Not to mention spiced beef, there was nothing but wine and blood. There was nothing else to eat. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows and didn't think much of it. Since there was no meat, she would drink more wine. Thus, she took 2 wine glasses, pulled out a decent-looking red wine, and walked upstairs. There's no spiced beef in the refrigerator. Helene Vivian asked Beligaju, did you remember wrongly? Beligaju frowned as if he was really thinking. Helene Vivian smiled and said, you must have remembered wrongly. The 2 little ones had nothing to say about this situation and continued to play with the blocks. After playing for a while, Qingshan began to rub her eyes with her little hands. Seeing this, Bailey Shangxia picked up her little brother with difficulty and then said to Helene Vivian coolly, Mommy, little brother is sleepy. I'll take him to sleep. Go ahead. Helene Vivian looked at the swaying little figure in relief. Even her smile was gentle. Beligaju sat in his original position, swirling the wine glass in his hand with one hand and placing the other hand behind Helene Vivian. His eyes were dark. Chapter 978. Beligaju sneered. The black thumb ring on his finger glowed as he clasped the handrail. Everyone knew that the king was not to be trifled with, but no one knew why the usually emotionless king was so cold when he woke up this morning. Even though they lived 9,000 feet below the ground, they still wanted to jump out of the villa to get some fresh air. However, in the next second, the surrounding atmosphere suddenly changed. When Beligaju saw the woman cooking in the kitchen, the corners of his mouth curled up. Even the temperature around him rose by a few degrees. The demons were so moved that they were about to cry. The Phoenix King was an angel who came to save them. What are you doing? Beligaju reached out and hugged his little phoenix from behind. Helene Vivian didn't stop. She put down the kitchen knife and opened the lid of the pot. She pinched a fried bun and fed it to him. I just made it. Eat it while it's hot. There's your favorite prawns inside. Bailey Jiaju chewed on the small fried bun that was crispy on the outside and crispy on the inside. He only felt that his whole body was warm. Although he didn't have much of a desire for human food other than his soul, it was an exception when it was made by a certain someone. Is it good? Yes. Then I'll pinch more. Helene Vivian looked very happy. There's nothing in the fridge. I just sent someone to buy these prawns. I only bought a little, but there's also bean and egg stuffing. Since you like beans, eat a few more before you go to the company. Beligaju ate another bun, but this time He pinched it and put it into his mouth himself. I don't have to go to the company. Don't have to go to the company. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. But today is Thursday. Beligaju's voice was very calm and unhurried. The company's day off is Thursday. Hellion Vivian, Bailey Shanxia was tying a napkin for his younger brother who was sitting at the dining table. Hearing his father's words, he couldn't stand it anymore and rolled his eyes disdainfully. His Highness seemed to have realized that his lie this time was too clumsy, so he calmly changed the topic. Why is the fried bun so small? Qingchun and Shangxie are still young. It's not convenient for them to eat big ones, but it's not easy for them to become oily if they eat small ones. Also, it's easier for them to digest. As Hellion Vivian spoke, she wrapped another small fried bun and put it into the pot. Then, she covered the pot with a lid. Okay, it'll be ready in 10 minutes. I'll wrap something else. It was obvious that Bailey Jiaju did not want Hellion Weiwei to pay attention to others, even if it was his son. You don't have to go through so much trouble. Those two brats can digest anything they eat. For some reason, Hellion Vivian wanted to laugh when she saw the way His Highness pursed his thin lips. She tilted her head and kissed him. Help me bring the plate up. Bailey Jiaju's mood was obviously better, but he still felt that the two little light bulbs sitting opposite him were an eyesore. Not to mention Qing Chun, the most eyesore to him was his eldest son, who obviously did not need to eat human food, but still wanted to snatch the pan-fried dumplings with him. Bailey Shanxia's favorite pastime was to make his father unhappy. He knew how possessive his father was, so he deliberately ate a few more pan-fried buns. Beligaju looked at his behavior coldly and then smiled. Shangxia, you don't have to go to kindergarten today. The advertiser we worked with last time is very satisfied with you and appointed you to shoot the advertisement. Come to the company with me in the afternoon. There are some things I need to talk to you about in private. Bailey Shanxia choked on his own food. Dad, it's not good for me to be doing this at such a young age, right? Hellion Qingchun. Is there no ambiguity in this sentence? You don't want to enter the acting industry? Beligaju raised his eyebrows dangerously. Bailey Shanxia gritted his teeth. He wanted to, but he didn't want to talk to his father in private. What was the difference between that and being one-sided? I also think that Shangxia is too young. Hellion Vivian patted her eldest son's head. Isn't it too early for him to enter the acting industry? Beligaju looked at Hellion Vivian slowly. No, he's already 3 years old. It's time for him to earn money to support himself. Hellion Vivian, it was obvious that she and His Highness's definition of age were not on the same level. However, as a good brother, Bailey Shanxia reluctantly agreed when he heard that he could earn money. In the past, Bailey Shanxia had never cared about these things. However, ever since he had Qing Chun, he deeply realized that he had to shoulder the heavy responsibility of supporting the family. Bailey Shanxia's definition of supporting the family was to buy delicious food for his younger brother, to buy fun things for his younger brother, and to give his younger brother a lot of money. Therefore, on that day, Bailey Shanxia arrogantly followed his father into the company. Usually, there weren't many people in the CEO's office of the Juwei Group. This made it very convenient for Beligaju to communicate with his son in a friendly manner. First, tell me how you have slandered me in front of your imperial mother. Dad, I can tell you, but can you not make me stick to the wall like this? I'm scaring away all the ghosts around me. Bailey Shanxia raised his two small arms and bared his little fangs that belonged to a demon. Bailey Jiaju was very indifferent and did not want to be long-winded. He took out his phone and opened up WeChat. Look at the phone and confess all your crimes to your mother. Also, tell her at least 3 good points about me. Otherwise, I will throw you back to the magical realm in a month's time. No matter how cool Bailey Shanxia was, he was now listless. He drooped his little head and began to repent of his crimes. Mom, I shouldn't say that Dad has had many women. In fact, he has been relying on his right hand for the past 3 years. You know how perverted he is. He thinks that everyone is dirty when he looks at them. Yes, I shouldn't say that he cheated, and I shouldn't have thought of running away from home with you and your younger brother. He asked me to tell him 3 good points about him, but I can't think of a single one even after thinking for a long time. When Helene Vivian heard the last WeChat message, she heard a man's deep voice. "Little brat, shut up." She couldn't help but laugh. Instead of replying to the message, she directly called him. "What are you doing?" "He's feeling uneasy and is repenting." Beligaju lied without batting an eyelid. "Where are you now?" Helene Vivian put away the things in her hands. "I'm at the car dealership, but I'm almost done here. There's nothing in the fridge at home." "I'm thinking of bringing Chun to the supermarket later. I didn't drive when I came out today." Beligaju's gaze swept across his eldest son, who was still sticking to the corner of the wall, and the countless reporters who were standing outside the building. His thin lips slowly curved. "Come and pick me up. We'll go to the supermarket together, and then we'll go home." Chapter 979. I didn't drive when I came out today. Beligaju's gaze swept across his eldest son, who was still sticking close to the corner of the wall, as well as the countless reporters standing outside the building. His thin lips slowly curved into a smile. "Come and pick me up. We'll go to the supermarket together, then we'll go home." Helene Vivian did not suspect anything. Her voice was crisp. "All right, I'll look for you in a while. Let's talk later. I still have something to do here." Beligaju looked at the phone that had been hung up. He did not show any signs of displeasure. Instead, the smile on his face deepened. Bailey Shanxia was still there with his arms raised. His expression was very cool. In his heart, he was thinking, Ju Wei Group has so many cars. Any one of them could have sent Dad home. Why did he want Mom to pick him up? No matter how he thought about it, there must be a conspiracy. Could it be related to the reporters outside? A glint flashed across Bailey Shangxia's crimson eyes. Was Dad trying to... CEO Ju, all the reporters outside have arrived. Manager Zhang, who was in charge of corporate publicity, walked over with a smile. I just don't know what CEO Ju wants to announce. All the reporters are very excited. However, they're worried that they might ask questions that they shouldn't ask. That's why they sent me to ask CEO Ju in advance. Is there anything that CEO Ju can't talk about? Bailey Jia Ju crossed his slender legs. The side of his face was handsome. There's nothing that can't be discussed because... Speaking to this point, he paused and looked up at Manager Zhang with a smile that wasn't a smile. This time, what I want to announce is my private affairs. Private affairs? Manager Zhang's eyes widened. For a moment, he lost his composure. One could not blame him for this reaction. One had to know that their boss had been very mysterious since the day he came to a city. He was a truly well-known figure, not only in City A, but also in the surrounding cities. As long as one was in the business world, there were few who did not know Beligaju. Many people racked their brains to get close to the boss. When the media heard the boss's name, they would want to get some first-hand information. However, the media did not dare to do so because they could not afford to offend this king-like man. Previously, President Du, who was in charge of publicity, had violated his boss's taboo and brought a large number of media outlets to interview him. That was why he was directly kicked out of Ju Wei Group and even cut off his future business path. Now, the president was actually calling for a press conference to discuss his personal matters. Manager Zhang felt that the world was a little surreal, so much so that he began to wonder if he had heard wrongly. What? Beligaju put down the pen in his hand and raised an eyebrow at him. Do you have any questions? Manager Zhang quickly shook his head. No. I'll go and get the media ready for the interview now. Manager Zhang regained his ability and experience. CEO Ju, I'll go first. Beligaju nodded. Bailey Shangxia opened his mouth and said, Manager Zhang, help me find an agent. Manager? Manager Zhang stopped in his tracks in confusion. If it were any other child who had said such words, he would have definitely coaxed them with candy. However, the person who had said such words was the devilish little boss. Everyone in the upper management of the Ju Wei Group knew that no one could provoke this little boss. He was different from ordinary rich second-generation heirs. He did not need to rely on anyone's power to make people feel numb after seeing his means. Manager Zhang often wondered who CEO Ju had given birth to such a genius. Just by standing there, he was born to make people want to submit to him, even if he was just a child. That's right, manager. Bailey Shangxia was still standing as a punishment, so he could not move his arms. He only looked at Manager Zhang and said coolly, I need a gold medal manager to help me debut. Debut? Manager Zhang felt that today's surprises were coming one after another. Could the debut that the little master was talking about be the debut that he was thinking of? Bailey Shangxia nodded casually. From today onwards, I will officially enter the entertainment industry. In the future, I will appear in front of you from time to time. Also, other than a manager, you better find me an assistant who can save money. Otherwise, Manager Zhang, I will fire you. Manager Zhang. Damn it. He was in charge of publicity, not human resources. Why couldn't the devil little master find a suitable assistant? He was the one who was fired. I'll try my best. Manager Zhang felt very helpless. For the 134th time in his life, he had the urge to resign and leave. However, when he thought about it carefully, other than the big and small bosses who were harder to please, everything else in the Zhu Wei group was very smooth, especially when it came to money. Well, there's no hurry to find an assistant. You can call the best manager first and ask him to come over. When the little one said this, his tone was very cool. However, when a child said this while leaning against the corner of the wall with his hands slightly raised, it really made people want to laugh. Manager Zhang resisted the urge to laugh until one of the best managers in the entertainment industry walked in with a confused look on his face. Only then did he feel relieved. CEO Zhu, are you looking for me? As expected of a top manager, he was very good at observing the atmosphere. When he walked into the office and raised the corner of his eyes, he more or less understood that the person who was looking for him was definitely not Manager Zhang. However, what was the devil little boss doing? If he was not wrong, was he being punished to stand? The top manager only glanced at Bailey Shangxia once and did not dare to take a second look. After all, everyone knew that the devil little boss was not to be trifled with. Although his current posture was extremely cute, it was still the same. Beligaju's voice was still graceful and noble. Even if he did not look up, it still gave off a strong sense of oppression. The person who is looking for you is not me. Then, the top manager was a little confused. After all, Manager Zhang only told him to come up as soon as possible over the phone and did not tell him what was going on. Even the secretary outside the office did not know anything. According to usual practice, he would not be called to the top floor. After all, the entertainment industry was only a small part of the Zhu Wei group. No matter how good he was still just a manager. Why would he be summoned? I asked Manager Zhang to introduce you to me. The little one pressed his back against the wall and pursed his lips. It's not convenient for me to take the documents in this position. There's a contract on the office table. Help me take a look. If there's no problem, sign the contract with the other party. I want to debut immediately. Debut. Introduce. His reaction was the same as Manager Zhang's. The top manager trembled and immediately glanced at Manager Zhang. We've been classmates for so many years. How could you frame me like this? Chapter 980. Manager Zhang started to look at the ceiling guiltily. He had no other choice, because if there was no one to distract the devilish young master, he would be the one to suffer. He could only drag his good friend down with him. As the saying goes, good friends are meant to be tricked. The golden manager stabilized his emotions and began to convince himself that at the very least, there was no other child in the world who had a better temperament than the demonic young master. Although people who spent too much time with the young master would go crazy, that unique, demonic little face of his would definitely be popular the moment he debuted. Moreover, all the resources of the Zhu Wei group would be used on him. If he counted carefully, would this be considered a promotion? After some mental preparation, the manager looked through the information. This commercial is not bad. It's a big name in the country, suitable for the young master's identity. If you debut with this commercial, it should be easy for people to remember you. It's okay if they don't remember. The point is, how much did they pay? Bailey Shangxia raised his little eyebrow. The manager glanced at the price and said, although it's not as good as movie stars, the young master's identity is still there. They also gave a fair price. Bailey Shanxie heard this and raised his little chin. I can appear on screen half naked. So, the manager's eyes were filled with confusion. He really didn't understand why the devilish young master would change the topic to this. Shouldn't it be more expensive to appear on screen half naked? Bailey Shanxie pointed at him with his little finger and said in a very imposing manner, "So you should tell them to be responsible for giving me more money." The manager, "That's right. Indeed, some movie stars would be more expensive if they appeared on screen half naked, but what's the use of being naked for a 3-year-old brat? Tell me, who will look at you? Who will look at you?" Manager Zhang was also listening at the side, and he almost couldn't help but laugh out loud. Especially when he saw his good friend's entire body petrified on the spot. He covered his mouth and coughed twice before saying, "Young master, when you first start out, money isn't the main point. The key is to gain popularity. To me, more money is the most important." Bailey Shanxie said very firmly. The gold medal manager frowned. "Young master, why do you need so much money?" The shares of Zhu Wei Group were rising every day. What was wrong with the young master? Bailey Shanxie furrowed his brows and said, "You should know how difficult it is to support a family now." He had always known that it was not easy to support a family. But why would a 3-year-old child say such words? The golden agent, who had always been calm in front of the media, grabbed her hair and asked, "So, that's why I asked them to give me more advertising fees. I don't know if this amount of money is enough to pay for my younger brother's teaching fees." Bailey Shanxie put on a cool expression and sighed seriously. Life is really not easy. The gold medal manager was speechless. "What are you, a 3-year-old, acting like an old man for?" Manager Zhang looked at his old classmate who was about to go crazy and pulled him over. He lowered his voice and whispered, "Did you hear what the young master said just now?" "Of course I heard it. He said that he wants to support a family." "A 3-year-old child wants to support a family?" The gold medal manager did not know whether to laugh or cry. He even said that he wants to teach his younger brother. Wait a minute. Younger brother? The gold medal manager and manager Zhang looked at each other at lightning speed. Bam! Baligaju reached out and closed the Apple laptop on his desk. He raised his eyes and looked in their direction. The gold medal manager and manager Zhang swallowed their saliva. They did not expect that the CEO, who had always been known as a devil, was in a good mood. He did not even mention their conversation just now. Instead, he looked at his 2 subordinates with a faint smile and said, "From the car dealership to here. It should be about time. Go and prepare. Arrange for the media interview to be held in the lobby on the 1st floor. I will go down with Shanxie." Yes. Even though manager Zhang had a lot of questions, he did not dare to ask. He walked out of the office first. The media was very enthusiastic. All kinds of cameras were crowded in the reception hall on the 1st floor. Every reporter was waiting for Baligaju to appear. However, at this moment, Hellion Vivian saw a person who was not supposed to be here. "Woman, I have been looking for you for a long time before I finally found your location." In the darkness, a small figure was sitting cross-legged in a car. His eyes were bright ruby red, and there was a smile on his face. He looked extremely bloodthirsty and evil. The black scythe on his shoulder was 5 times taller than him. Due to the appearance of the small figure, the entire parking lot seemed to have sunk into an unprecedented chill. The other people who came to park their cars did not understand what was going on. They only felt that the weather was about 30 degrees Celsius. Why did it suddenly become so cold? Could it be because they were in the parking lot? A few people could not help but look behind them. However, they could not see what was going on. Only Hellion Vivian and Qing Chun, who came with Hellion Vivian, could see the small figure with the aura of Hades. Behind him was a trembling judge. "Little King of Hell?" When Hellion Vivian spat out these 3 words, her willowy eyebrows furrowed. "Why are you here?" "Little King of Hell," said in a deep voice, "it only shows that the power of love is great. For Little Hook, I don't care about anything else." Hellion Vivian, "However, there is something you must know." Little King of Hell lowered his voice. "I believe you have also felt it. Ever since your man came to the modern world, the evil aura around him has become more and more intense. Even his murderous aura can be easily revealed. Moreover, he is not aware of it. Hellion Vivian slowly raised her eyes. Her voice was very calm. What are you trying to say? This isn't a good sign. The son of the king of hell rubbed his nose and said, "Let me make this clear. I'm risking my life to deliver the news to you because I know that you're Uncle Tang's friend and we've been through thick and thin together since ancient times. That's why I'm here to inform you. Since tearing apart time and space is an act that defies the natural order, both humans and deities would exhaust a huge amount of energy to do so. Only a handful of people can do it. Perhaps Bailey Jiaju is the only one in this world who can do this and chase after you all the way to the modern era. However, the cost of doing so is equally huge. The price he paid to find you is his divinity. You should know that His Highness has fallen from heaven. If he doesn't have his divinity, it means that he will become a complete demon. Chapter 981. Hellion Vivian tightened her grip on the steering wheel. She looked at the little king of hell who was sitting in front of her. After losing her warmth, her beautiful eyes became especially sharp. It was easy to imagine the scene of her fighting a group of demons by herself. The little king of hell had never forgotten that she was Phoenix, the Phoenix who could kill blood see once she picked up the Phoenix bone knife. However, Hellion Vivian did not lose her temper. Instead, she smiled and turned around to pinch Qingqian's face. "Son, you get out of the car first. I have something to talk to your little brother about." Qingqian had always been smart. He also understood Hellion Vivian. He knew that once she had decided on something, she would not let anyone interfere. He pushed open the car door and jumped down shakily. He was holding a devil doll in his hand. He did not understand what a godhead was. No one had ever told him about it. However, little Qingqian was very clear about one thing. This person did not bring good news. Perhaps he could think of a solution with his brother when he saw him. After all, it was related to his father. However, he did not know that Hellion Vivian did not want him to listen to what he was going to say next. It was because Beligaju's change was very likely to hurt Hellion Vivian. It was because of this that the little king of hell chose to tell her the news. Tiandao, Buddhism, and even the group of death gods in the Hades have started to prepare. You should know that when the emperor fell from heaven and became a demon, even the upper three Daos were afraid of him. After so many years, they would not want to see the emperor become a complete demon. If that happened, all living things in the world would be threatened. Without the suppression of the godhead, the evil aura would dominate. When that time comes, he would kill everyone. He won't become like that. Hellion Vivian interrupted the little king of hell. Her side profile revealed a never-before-seen indifference. The little king of hell narrowed his eyes at her. "Woman, you should know what a complete demon means. Even you will only become his food when that time comes. Because you have made a contract. Once he helps you to fulfill your wish, the contract will take effect immediately. He will treat you as the most delicious food and devour you bite by bite. His Highness is different from others. He was born from chaos. Once he becomes a demon, he will lose all his humanity. You should know this. I know it very well. However, I will say it again, he won't become like that." Hellion Vivian retracted her hand from the steering wheel and looked at the little king of hell. "I won't let him become like that." The little king of hell paused and shook his head. "Woman, we all know that no one can stop this change. His godhead is gone. This time, his godhead is really gone. Tearing through time and space is more terrifying than falling from heaven. Do you understand what I mean? He didn't find you before. Now that he has found you, the shackles are gone. He must have shown some signs of demonization, such as hating the sun and starting to thirst for blood. When will the war begin?" Hellion Vivian didn't wait for the little king of hell to finish speaking. Her voice was so calm that the king of hell felt that she knew the direction of the situation better than he did. "I know very well what the people of Tiandao and Buddhism are thinking. This time, they came to the underworld because they know that they're not strong enough. They don't want to lose their godhead, so they formed an alliance. Since you came to me, it means that they are almost done with the matter. Have they started to arrange people around him? This time, the underworld is on whose side, right? The little king of hell's expression became serious. That's right, Vivian. You have to understand that no one will tolerate an existence of the six paths of destruction. He turned from a god to a demon and was born from chaos. He will become a killing machine, and you will be the first soul he will claim. That's why I came to tell you that this time, I'm afraid we will become enemies. To be honest, I don't want to be your enemy, but Vivian, you have to admit that when that time comes, he will no longer be the Beligaju you know. He is. Hellion Vivian's starry eyes that had been silent all this time seemed to have a glimmer of light. With a piercing determination, she said, "No matter what he becomes, he will always be him. Like you said, I don't want to be your enemy, but there is one thing that no one can hurt him in front of me. If the people of the underworld want to make a move, there is no need for him to use his demonic aura. The Phoenix bow knife will make the first move." The little king of hell did not say anything. At that moment, the parking lot was very quiet. After an unknown amount of time, the little king of hell let out a long sigh. Even if the people of the underworld don't make a move, you won't be able to protect him. He will hurt you first, won't he? You are now resisting the heavenly Tao and the Buddhist Tao, but in the end, the one whose soul will be devoured will be you. You still don't understand what a killing machine means. I understand. Hellion Vivian's voice was somewhat heavy, and it carried a strong warning. Even if he becomes a killing machine, even if the entire world wants him to disappear, even if my soul will be devoured, I will protect him when I can. So, don't challenge my bottom line. The little king of hell's eyes darkened. I understand. I will control the people of the underworld. But, woman, you have to be careful. With that, he stood up and smiled. If the entire world wants to be your enemy, then should I stand by your side and sweep the world with my blade? Phoenix is indeed a phoenix. But what the little king of hell was worried about was, after losing his humanity, would Beligaju, who only wanted to kill, still know about these things? What scared him the most was that Beligaju should have already begun to change. How far has he changed? No one knew. Perhaps even he himself was only slightly aware of it. After all, demons represented the darkest of selfishness. He would do everything in his power to fulfill the wish of his exclusive soul. From that moment onwards, he had already begun to demonize. Therefore, Vivian was in the most dangerous situation. Even so, do I still have to stay by his side? The little king of hell looked at the axe in his hand and muttered to himself. The judge behind him stuttered, Little Highness, if you tell all these things to Phoenix, Lord will definitely tie you up. Am I afraid of him? The little king of hell blew at his bangs. Go back and tell my father that I will take Little Go's surname in the future. Don't let him come to the human world to look for me. Don't you know that a married son is like spilled water? Chapter 982. Judge, you're clearly the one who's married off, okay? If the adults hear this, they'll definitely beat you to death. Little Highness, this isn't how you chase people. You're completely throwing yourself at them. Little King of Hell didn't care what others thought of him. He carried his giant axe and walked forward, completely ignoring Judge's cries and screams. Ching Chun stood there, her little hands playing with the ears of the demon plushie, her eyes looking at the abnormal little brother in front of her, but she didn't say anything. Little King of Hell was more interested in him. After all, he had never met a child younger than him, except for Little Hook, that was his future wife. When he saw Ching Chun, he began to dig into his pocket. After a long time, he took out a piece of chocolate. Do you want to eat? My wife gave it to me. Ching Chun thought about it. She was going to see her brother later, and her brother liked to eat chocolate. So she took it, and then gave Little King of Hell a pearl, saying in a childish voice, "This is for your wife." Judge, only you would take Little Highness's words seriously. How old is he? And he already has a wife. Little King of Hell was very happy. Because of Ching Chun's words, he immediately decided to bring Little Hook to play with them in the future. He heard that he had an older brother, a pure little demon. Ha! He must be very bad. With an even worse creature as a foil, Little Hook realized that there was nothing bad about him, other than the fact that he liked to kill people and drag them to hell. It's decided they'll ask him out to play in the future. Of course, that was on the premise that the Beligaju would really be, as Helene and Vivian said, and was still safe in the car. Helene and Vivian looked at the two children who were talking. She was very clear about Little King of Hell's personality. Since she had just sent Chinchin away, Little King of Hell wouldn't tell Chinch about this. That was good. Helene and Vivian tilted her head and opened the car door. She smiled and said, "Let's go, son. Follow me to pick them up." Ching-chan swayed a little as she walked. Her little hand was held by Helene and Vivian as they entered the elevator. She lifted her little face and looked at the numbers on the elevator. "Don't worry." Helene and Vivian raised her eyebrows. Ching-chin's eyes widened as she said, "My brother and I are here, so you don't have to worry." Helene and Vivian smiled and pulled her son's little head over. She lowered her head and kissed the hair on the top of his head. "I know. What do you want to eat tonight? Remember to choose when you go to the supermarket later." The mother and son often went to the supermarket before, so they were familiar with these things. On the other hand, the father and son pair had always been aloof. Not to mention going to the supermarket, they barely showed their faces in front of others. Therefore, when they walked out, all the cameras and gazes were focused on them. The media rushed to press the shutter button and did not even care about their image. They had never seen such a stylish father and son pair. The older one was so handsome that it made people's legs go weak. Wearing a noble, pure, black trench coat, he exuded elegance and nobility from his bones. The younger one was like a demon. He had a high-nosed bridge, light, thin lips, and exquisite facial features that made people want to look at him again and again. His eyes also showed that he was not to be trifled with. The two of them standing in front of each other was simply too cute. Today, CEO Ju is holding a press conference to announce two things. This was the time to show the strength of a corporate marketing manager. Manager Lee stood up with a faint smile. His voice was not loud, but it was enough for all the reporters present to hear clearly. The first news is that from today onwards, the first successor of Ju Wei Group, young master Bailey Shangxia, will officially enter the entertainment industry. The media did not expect that the young master of Ju Wei Group would actually drop such a bombshell the moment he appeared. Everyone knew that Beligaju had a son, but this son was only seen by the higher-ups of Ju Wei Group. Everyone else had only heard of him. Now, not only did they see him, but he would also appear on TV screens from time to time. This was undoubtedly the headline of the headlines. The first successor of Ju Wei Group, entering the entertainment industry with such an identity, did not even need to think about it. He was going to explode in popularity. Plus his face. Oh my God, how could there be such a child? Many female reporters at the scene had already turned from passers-by to fans. Everyone was in the entertainment industry and knew very well what Bailey Shangxi's debut would predict. That face would not only cause a sensation in Asia, but also internationally. Of course, this news is not the main point of CEO Ju's announcement today. Manager Lee continued speaking and looked at Beligaju. The media was all surprised. This is not the main point. Then what is the main point? Manager Lee smiled and gestured for them to be quiet. Just as he was about to speak on his behalf like before, he heard his CEO's voice slowly ring out. His voice was slightly deep and magnetic. The main point is that I want to change the way you have introduced me in the past. I have read many magazines. When they mention me, they always say that I am single. In fact, this is wrong. I'm already married. Furthermore, my wife loves me very much. After Bailey Ju uttered those words, one could imagine what kind of reaction the crowd had. All the media froze in an instant. Even Manager Lee, who was in charge of publicity, did not know that his CEO would hold a press conference to talk about this. Everyone felt like they had been struck dumb. Only Bailey Shangxia snorted coolly. "Dad, that last sentence, did you mix up the object and the subject? This is the first time I have heard someone say that my wife loves me very much in an introduction. That's enough. I was just stating the facts." Beligaju glanced at him indifferently. "Also, you can shut up and go look for your manager." His manager was still in shock. At this moment, the media finally reacted. The entire venue was in an uproar. Manager Lee's first reaction was to stop them. However, someone pulled him aside. CEO Ju is really married? But why does the people in Ju Wei group never know about your wife? I don't think you have a female companion before, right? Manager Lee thought that it was over. Another media company was going to close down. After all, although the CEO said that they could ask about his personal matters, such a question would definitely be cut off. However, Manager Lee did not expect that the usually cold and noble man would actually answer, and he even answered with a smile. There was a meaningful look at the corner of his mouth. You will see her in a while. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.